Good morning, everyone. Yes. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Hash Church 2.0, episode 5.
Sending out the link right now to everyone. Get everyone inside here. See what's going on today. How's everyone feeling? We're really excited today to talk about greenhouses. It's been a really wonderful thing for us to be able to grow in greenhouses, and it's a beautiful environment to be in, and it's really changed a lot of the way that we grow, and it offers us different environments in our world to be able to create beautiful spaces. So looks like we got Jonathan Waldman in here
From Forever Flowering. Nice to
Good morning.
Morning. Great to have you here.
Great to be here.
Yes. So how are you feeling today? We got Farmer Tom coming in the house here.
Good morning, Farmer Tom.
Good morning.
Morning, Tom.
Thanks for having me. Hey, Jonathan, what's up, buddy?
Good to see you, brother.
Good to see you too, homie.
Good morning, Eric Flowering. Nice to see you this morning.
Eric, so how are you feeling today? You're in the greenhouse there down in California. Tell us what's going on. Where are you sitting?
I'm at the office here at Forever Flowering in Grass Valley, and I'm just out here at the greenhouses because the weather's so nice. I figured I'd sit outside today. What's up, Jason? Can you hear me?
Morning, Jason.
Dragonfly, you guys are muted. Oh, there you go.
Okay, so I was thinking, Farmer Tom, maybe you can give us a minute, and why don't you tell us a little bit about your story and what's going on with in your world?
Okay, well, thanks. My name's Farmer Tom, and I'm out of Lowerman. I'm originally out of San Diego, but I've been up here in Vancouver, Washington for the past 14 years. We've got a 5-acre farm. We bought an old nursery, actually, so it came with 500-foot greenhouses, little Quonset hut styles, 2 wells, 2-inch main lines up and down the property. Is pretty much everything I wanted. And so we've been here ever since and kind of doing our thing. Originally from San Diego, was part of the 215 push back in the day. Our collective shelter from the storm in Hillcrest in San Diego got raided in '99, where I got arrested with Steve McWilliams for 448 plants. And that kind of kicked me into the advocate zone. So like the worst thing could happen to you, and then you're not afraid anymore. So we've been kind of pushing through over the years. We worked, I kind of took a different route. So I worked a lot with the media back in the day here in Vancouver, and in the early days of I-502, and even back in the medical days when we were doing the farmers markets up here. I just thought it was a push to a better way to play it by, being more accessible to them, and then trying to do my best to represent cannabis as well as possible. That's kind of all led up to, we did some education over here over the years. We worked with Washington State to legalize concentrates, because when they first came out with I-502, the legal system up here, they were only concentrates were gonna be in medibles. And so I was asked by Como News out of Seattle to do an open blast. Everybody thought I was crazy. We did it anyways, and within 2 weeks, basically our message was, if you don't regulate it and then don't tax it. At the time here in Washington State, it was like every 10 days to 2 weeks, we were having another explosion. We're going, if you don't regulate it and tax it, these kids will blow themselves up. It's a $20 to $100 fix, and you're gonna have a lot of problems on your hands. So within 2 weeks, they changed the law. That kind of led into me being asked to work with the Department of Health and Human Services on the federal level, and we got to educate 7 agents from the CDC on production and processing in cannabis in 2015. When I first got on the phone with 10 agents, they knew nothing about cannabis. They were getting all their information from YouTube. No offense to YouTube, but I kind of went, wasn't it unfair to come in and do evaluation of our industry and not really know what's going on? So they agreed to come to my farm, that we were going to take them on a tour. They didn't like that idea, but they made my farm a secure location where federal agents can learn, touch, and handle cannabis. So I had them out here a total of 5 days. I had them out here in August for a couple days. My plants were about 6 feet tall, and we were thinning them out at the time. And I showed them all my practices that I've been using as far as the nutrients and everything else we were doing with the plants. And we gave them demos on hydrocarbons, and I brought in JD from Skunk Farm to kind of tell them about concentrates, and Dana from Goat Labs to kind of give them the lab spectrum. And we bought, we did hand trimming, machine trimming. And then that was kind of the precursor to when they came out for the actual health hazard evaluation in October of 2015. That was like the glory year. I mean, it was like the best year ever. And I was lucky that we didn't get earlier rains and we didn't have any kind of issues going at the time. So we had them out there for 3 days, and they were there to collect scientific data for workplace health and safety. So they hooked us up with sniffers, one that collected mold, one that collected dust particles, and then they had similar apparatuses around the property, in the greenhouses, out in the open air, and in our trimming and drying room. They gathered all the data, they went back, and it was published in April of 2017. And in August of 2017, I got my own webpage on the cdc.gov webpage dedicated to the scientific study. OSHA's using them on a national level to create workplace health and safety standards for the industry. Cal OSHA's using the same report, and I believe Washington State's used it also. So now that the report's out, the latest thing is that my farm is referred to as an organic cannabis farm. Research studies that are being done on the federal level. So that's kind of what I've been up to the last few years.
Yeah, that's really a lot of.
Thanks so much, Tom. That's really interesting. It sounds like you're leading the way in so many ways for us, to get out the good information. So
well, it really takes all of us, and I'm just doing my part. We've also this is our 4th semester teaching at Clark Community College, a cannabis in your health course. I've done the agricultural part. We've done cloning and seed popping, and then, the mediums to use, and taking your plant to harvest for highest yields, and harvesting and curing section. So, and we're into our 2nd year. We're really excited about it, and, just doing my part.
That's excellent. Well, thank you for that. I think maybe we should go to Marcus down in Jamaica for a minute. If you have a minute to tell us what's going on down there and how you're feeling, that would be really great. And then Eric, you can jump on and lead it from there.
All right. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Is the mic coming?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, awesome. Excellent. Little bit of a delay, but no problem. Awesome, Tom. That was wonderful to hear everything you had to say. I don't even know you, and I like you immediately. So that was great. Thank you guys all for showing up today to do this episode. Thanks to Forever Flowering Greenhouse, Eric and Jonathan for helping moderate, and of course to the Dragonfly.
Sounds like Marcus may be coming in.
Myself, but I am here with 5+ years, so he'll hopefully be able to add some value to the conversation, and just really, really stoked that everyone showed up to share in this dialogue today. I think, like Tom was saying, YouTube's not always the best source for information, but we're trying to change that every day with at least our little slice. And it's because of people like all of the people sitting on this panel that decide to come and share their time with us that we're able to put this caliber of information out. So I do thank all of you greatly for that. And I guess maybe I'll have a little bong rip while we go over to the next person.
Sounds excellent. We got this really nice pipe from the Snodgrass family last night, Bob Snodgrass. So I think we'll take a a first hit off this one.
Oh, you're gonna hit the Gondal pipe.
Exactly. This is sweet.
Okay, Eric, and let's nice to have you here this morning. Tell us a little bit about what's going on.
Oh, I'm glad you guys are here with us. This is awesome. Well, I just, I'm here at the office today. We have good Wi-Fi here, or better than at my house, so I figured I'd come here, and it's a little bit better background. The weather is great. It's almost like spring, light depth weather. It's crazy here in California. And, the people that we have on are some, I think, in my opinion, some pretty cool people, and I'm excited to hear and talk with them and let the rest of the community get to know them as well. And so I kind of wanted to start off and try to do some brief introductions real quick so maybe everybody can hear who's who, and that way they can stay tuned, and that way everybody gets a chance to say hello. And then I'm going to
Hang on one sec, Eric. I think, Tom, your microphone's on still.
Okay.
There you go. At the top is the mute button. Top of the screen. There you go. Basically, why don't we just do a quick introduction for everybody, and we'll start it with Micah. Why don't you tell us who you are and your company, and then we'll get back to you for some conversation.
Can you guys hear me? All right, it's the first time on Google Hangouts, so I got to make sure I'm doing it right. Yeah, so my name is Micah Anderson, and I own a company called Leef Organics in California, and operate and own a few different farms in Humboldt and Mendocino County, and then have a couple projects in Southern California and Riverside. And we are basically a brand that you would find in any of the dispensaries. We make all kinds of different products, and one of the main focuses that we are doing right now is on CBD stuff. So we grow all of our own CBD genetics and turn them into all kinds of different products like topical soaps and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm stoked to be here. I'm in Colorado right now. Took 3 days off and tried to go snowboarding, but there's not very much snow over here. It's similar to California right now. So
Oh, damn.
British Columbia.
yeah, so I'm stoked to be on. Thanks for the invite. I really appreciate it, and I'm happy to hear what you guys have to say.
Right on, Micah. Well, thanks for coming, and I'm glad you joined us. Jonathan, why don't you give us a quick little who you are real fast?
All right. Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? First of all, I just want to get a big shout out to the Bubble Man down there in Jamaica. What's up, my brother? So glad to be here with you. I've been using your bag since I lived in Arcata in 2000. So, I was talking with my lady this morning, and we were just talking about how that just changed the game right there, man. And it really made hash making accessible to the people and really started the whole solventless movement, I believe. So big ups, brother, and big ups on your light dep hat. My name is Jonathan. I founded Forever Flowering in 2006. I've been working with Eric since 2007. We've really been working hard round the clock, year round, to, in the beginning, educate people as to why you wanted to block the light out of greenhouses. People would always laugh at us, like, why are you trying to block the light out of greenhouses? And so, for the first many years, it was a lot of education. And as we see the industry moving forward, and we're seeing the vast majority of licenses going, especially in states outside of California, going towards indoor cultivation, we're really seeing this massive carbon footprint that's being created. And you can see the headlines in so many places that they're saying cannabis is this massive energy consuming industry, and it's really not necessary. True, it is today, but it's totally not necessary. And so when you can really dial in a greenhouse to give you the somebody's on mute.
Wow, the mini
Hemp guy who came on has to mute. That person has to mute.
So anyway, when you design a greenhouse with the proper environment, you're able to get, top quality flowers and still have the efficiency of growing sun-grown. And as we're seeing in most regulated states, full sun-grown is really all going to extracts. They're really oil fields at this point. And what we're really seeing in the dispensaries are indoor or high grade light depth or greenhouse grown. And unfortunately, that's my intro. Before I ramble off too much, just had a cup of coffee. So much love to you guys.
Guy.
Get me started.
Oh no, you're good. You're good. We're going there. That's the direction we're headed for sure. Intros, Jason, you want to say hi and tell us who you are, where you're at real quick?
Everybody. So yeah, my name is Jason. He's been indoor growers for many years.
You might have to go closer to your computer.
We can't hear you, Jason.
Or maybe the earbuds.
Can you guys hear me okay?
The closer the better, for sure.
You can hear me okay? Is that working?
It's a little better, but you might want to get some earbuds if you have some from your phone.
Yeah, I'll go grab some earbuds.
Grab some, and I'll jump to JD real quick, and then we'll come back to you. Okay, cool. JD, why don't you give us a quick intro and say what you're all about? Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself.
All right, far out. All right, cool. Can you hear me? All right, this is great. I'm right here in Grass Valley. Run Gold Country Cannabis with my team here. We've been doing lots of greenhouse growing the last few years. Yeah, I don't know. We've had a lot of success just bringing medicine to the market, product. We've had a lot of success in the market.
You just have to put this at the front of the camera. Put it up, not there.
Hey, JD, hold on a second. JD, you're gonna have to hold on a second. Sorry, bro. I don't know who the hey hemp. I don't know if Dragonfly can mute him or not. The hemp fam. What? The hemp family. Yo. What you smoking on? All right, JD. Give it another try. Unmute.
I should be unmuted. No? All right, cool. Yeah. Gold Country Cannabis is my brand. We've just been out here growing for probably like the last 15 years. Worked my way from Sonoma County up into Mendo, Humboldt, Lake County, and found my way to Grass Valley and the Sierra foothills. And it's a great climate for greenhouse growing. We've had a lot of success and got a strong team. Just love it, the industry and everything about it. So it's really exciting to be included here with you guys, and can't wait to see where this conversation goes.
Awesome, JD. Well, thanks for joining us. And yeah, I can't wait to talk to you too. The hemp person bounced, so we can just move along. So we got Farmer Tom. We already had Bubble Man and Dem check in. And so let's talk some greenhouses a little bit. I know Micah's got to kind of maybe leave early. So I was going to maybe start with Micah. Bubble Man, you got something you want to say?
Oh, I was just going to say there's Skunkman's here as well if you guys want to hear a quick intro from him. I know a lot of people know a lot about him, but it might be a neat thing to hear a couple of words from the man himself.
Yeah, definitely. Sorry about that. I forgot.
No problem whatsoever. Here he is now.
Howdy, 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 everybody in Hash Church. My experience with greenhouses was I built my own greenhouse about 40 years ago. And then I moved to the Netherlands, where I ran many professional greenhouses with computerized darkening, computerized watering, and my favorite way to grow is greenhouses. Although there's, I've been there. I've seen most of the changes. We were one of the very first in the world to use darkening for to mature cannabis flowers when we were in a northern environment in the greenhouse. And if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to step up to the box. But except for that, I am what I am, and I think pretty much everybody knows me.
True story right there. Awesome, Sam. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Eric.
Right on, guys. Well, yeah, so I mean, basically, you know, we're here to talk about greenhouses, and everybody on the panel here is using greenhouses in some capacity, whether it's, you know, whether they're working with us or not. Everybody's got a unique story to themselves. And so, Micah, I was just going to kick it off with you, since in case you have to bounce early, at least we can get some of the information from Leef Organics. You know, I'm you know, a big fan of your products as well, just because everything you have is so cool and sun grown. And I use the pet CBDs, you know, for my old dogs, and even the CBD shampoo. And so, you know, not going into the products as much, I'm just curious for your story as, you know, a grower in Southern and Northern California. How have the greenhouses, or what, you know, what achievements or breakthroughs have you had in the greenhouse sector in the last couple of years?
Yeah, I think for me that where the, you know, greenhouses come into play, and especially light deprivation greenhouses come into play in this like new era of regulation and taxes and having to like really focus on your cost of goods. That's where I see, you know, not only do I think plants grow better in greenhouses, but for us, it's a way for us to get our cost of goods down. We're able to, you know, constantly be harvesting over and over and over again versus just getting one big harvest a year. And, you know, and then we're, you know, seeing a big difference between what we're getting in output in Southern California versus Northern California, just due to weather. And, you know, most of the places in Humboldt, Mendocino, we're all off the grid, and there's no power or nothing like that. So it's all ran off solar systems, which is awesome. And, or we're pulling tarps, you know, which is still totally good and works. But I think if that, I don't know if that answers your question or not, but for us, I think it's a way for us to constantly be getting fresh product in the rotation and not be sitting on just a bunch of, you know, older inventory, and helps us get our cost of goods down, which is super important.
Well, I mean, that's the name of the game these days, is keeping the cost of goods down, because there's so many things. I mean, now with regulation, state taxes have kicked in. So
Yeah.
I'm sure, you know, medical legal for a while now, the state taxes have kicked in. And so that's got to be a little bit of a new, I guess, new challenge for you to address.
Yeah. Every day, we always talk about it at the office. It's like a Rubik's Cube, you know, trying to figure out what changes you're going to have to deal with next. And
right.
I mean, the laws aren't even really set yet, and they're going to change again. So,
and so how do you feel about, I mean, you guys run fairly moderate sized greenhouses. Are you guys working on any big projects or anything coming up? Are you guys going to stay kind of the you know, mid-sized greenhouses that you've been using now and pulling tarps, or where's the future ahead now with trying to keep cost of production down and state taxes kicking in?
You know, that's a good question. I think for now, we have a bit of both. You know, as you know, we have some forever flowering greenhouses, and then we have some that we're pulling tarps on, and a lot of that comes down to what city or county you're in, and has a lot to do with what your local taxes are. So we do have a bigger project that we're working on in Riverside County, which we're going to be doing a bunch of. It'll be a bigger project, and it'll be a fully automated greenhouse setup. I personally like the idea of keeping greenhouses in a smaller environment versus like this massive Costco style thing. I think it's a lot easier to mitigate problems with all kinds of stuff, pests, and not that you don't need these massive HVAC systems and sort of turn the thing into a gigantic indoor room, which I see a lot of people doing. And so, yeah, I mean, I think in the future, we're definitely leaning towards building a couple of these bigger facilities, but there's still something to be said about quality product being grown in a small environment. You know, it's anytime we've ever scaled, you know, like we did in the last couple of years, it's hard to keep up and make sure that you're putting out the same quality product every single time. So It's a bit of both.
Is key. That's always a tough thing. And about consistency, a lot of the flower these days, I guess in California and some places, would end up going to distillates and oils and extracts, which is a good thing in some ways. But I'm kind of wondering if we're going to see flowers, on the shelves, top shelf flowers. People want to buy some flowers to go camping with, to roll a joint or do whatever. I mean, I know that there's a lot of mids going down, but is California going to be hit with a shortage, kind of like Nevada was, just in the top shelf flower category? I mean, I think all the other things are going to fall into place, but I just worry about that good doobie material. And I was reading about somebody the other day saying something about everybody's just going to get used to mids and not really remember what top shelf looks like. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute, I don't know about that. But I know that you guys are doing good in the top shelf category. But the Grow Sisters just joined us. And Siobhan, why don't you say hello? We all did an introduction before you jumped on. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, guys. Happy Hash Church. I got stoned and lost my way on the internet, so sorry I'm late. I am Siobhan Danger Darwish, and I own and operate California's first permitted cannabis location, West Coast Farms. And I am also one of the 5 Grow Sisters. Hi, Micah. We partied in Vegas. What? MJ BizCon. Yeah, so I guess, am I telling you more? Is it still my stage, or am I just introducing myself?
Oh, well, I mean, introduction, the different West Coast Grow Sisters. And is that your brand? I think you're muted.
Yeah, I had to mute her because you were echoing. Sorry about that.
Sorry.
Okay, we're back. Yes, those are my brands. The farm itself is West Coast Farms, and Grow Sisters Media Production is a little bit different. We're a little bit more of the education side. And initially it started because my sister, my actual sister, Sloan Reed, and I we didn't have money to market our farm. And so we decided to set a guerrilla marketing style of instructional videos, and yeah, they kind of took off. And so this year, it's our 2nd year doing the Grow Sisters, and we've adopted 4 new sisters, and some behind the scenes sisters. And so we're really able to branch out from the farm and cultivate cannabis in all its new facets. And so, yeah.
That's awesome. I met, yeah. Oh, am I echoing again?
You're good. You're good.
Am I echoey?
Yeah, anyone that doesn't have their mic muted will echo through someone else's camera. So just try to mute when you don't talk and get ready to unmute when you want to talk. And welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I met you at the Golden Tarp Awards, and that's where you were a host for the live stream. And so that was a pretty cool event too. And you guys did a really good job of hosting and live streaming that whole thing. So yeah, what's it like to be the first permitted farm in Humboldt County, by the way?
Stressful. A lot. We were the guinea pigs, and it felt like our heads were on the chopping block, to be completely honest. But on the flip side of that, it's been amazing. It's been wonderful. I mean, what a blessing I'm a 2nd generation farmer, and to be able to carry the torch for my father, who lived in the hills for years and years and years, and here I am with the first permitted farm. It's an honor. It's a blessing, hence Blessed Coast, But yeah, it's been crazy. We've gotten some really beautiful recognition for our farming techniques due to being the first. So we like to tell people that we filled out the application as simply as possible. Simple farming methods, simply organic. And so that's why we think we got it. Got lucky.
Well, that's really cool. I appreciate you coming on, and we'll talk a little bit more. JD, are you still over there? Oh, I see JD was walking around a little bit. Yeah, JD, you know, JD lives in Grass Valley. And it's funny, I don't even really know JD. I'm in Grass Valley too, and I happened to see him. Our kids go to the same school, and then I was at an event, and I saw he won an award last year and even this year, and I'm like, wait a minute. I'm at Cannabis events, and this guy's winning all these cups, and then I'm dropping my kids off at school, and there he is in the parking lot walking his kids, and it's like this, whoa, like right on. So I, wanted to meet him over the course of time, and so we started linking up slowly, and so I thought JD has a good story or interesting, background with, the ability to, enter these events and win them. And I'm curious on the style of growing you're using. Are you a high tech grower? Is it low tech? What's the secret to some of your success without giving everything away?
Oh, let's see. That's a good question. I just love it. We all love it so much. Like our team works really hard. Maybe we put in a little too much work sometimes. If that makes sense. We could probably not be as perfection driven, but we take really good care of them. It's compost tea, it's organic top dressings. It's funny. I feel like the plant really reflects what you're putting into it. So if everybody's in a clear space and working together, then it seems like the round will really show that. We had some really high terpene levels the last couple of rounds, and I don't know, maybe it was because the industry's changing and I was stressed out, and so the plant was stressed out, and those terpenes are its natural defense mechanism. It's like as the plant gets more stressed, it seems like it pushes out more medicine. I'm not exactly sure. We've just like I said, moving up the coast was great. Growing in Lake County was great. Moving into the Sierra foothills was absolutely amazing. Losing the coastal influence and really having these hot days seems to really trigger the plants into swelling up at the right time and just appreciating where we give it to them. I grow in everything from low-end carports, Costco car canopies with grow weave, all the way to 2,500 square foot auto depths that are completely dialed in. We've won awards from both directions, so it's like I haven't really been able to nail it down exactly what works. It just seems to be working across the board, and probably due to the level of love that my team puts in and this climate that we have.
How long have you lived in the Grass Valley? Or you said you started out maybe the coast, Lake County. How long have you been over here now to the foothills?
See, I was in Lake County in 2001, and then I made it here probably about 5 years ago. Smartsville, Browns Valley, North San Juan. Yeah, I've been kind of all over the place. Yeah, but the last 5 years I've really been able to dial it in, and it's awesome. This is where my family wanted to land. This is about as close to the snow as I could be, because the rest of them don't like the cold, and so it ended up being a great mix. So it's like close to Tahoe in the winter, below the snow line in the summer, the rest of the season, and it just really makes our job easy. So everything that we put in here seems to just go so much farther.
Yeah, it's almost like you could start pulling tarps today. I mean, this weather's been unreal.
Yeah, yesterday in Browns Valley it was 81 degrees. I mean, it's like at night we're still like in the low 50s, and so
yeah, that's some good growing weather.
Right.
Do you use a passive style greenhouse or a sealed greenhouse with mechanical ventilation? What's your style of greenhouse operation?
Like the canopies, if the ones we build ourselves, they're open all the way around. I have about a knee high to the ground. It's just wide open all the way around the greenhouse. I have one end of the canopy would be sealed. I mean, not sealed, but pulled down probably about 3/4 of the way, and then the other end wide open. And that kind of creates like a funnel, and it like forces air from the sides and the back and flushes it out that open end of the hoop automatically without using fans or anything. My auto dep is definitely like, closed up. I mean, I don't know how sealed it is, but it's definitely closed up and with thermostats, and can flush that air out really fast when it hits the right temperature.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, when you enter awards, so you enter them out of any greenhouse, it doesn't really matter. It's like, you don't have one greenhouse that's better for the award maker than the other, or terp maker, let's say. Unmute.
Yeah, I was trying to figure it out. I was trying to figure out like exactly what was the recipe. And the first one we won, we got a second place hybrid at HempCon, and that was with Harley Sue CBD strain going up against Indoor, and ended up winning. And that's just out of a Costco carport with no fans, no supplemental lighting. And it just did great. It's just like kind of look around, like, you can tell the plant that really does it. You can tell the round. You know when the round is just going off, and that one was really good. The Golden Tarp winners and Emerald Cup winners have been out of the auto dep probably at about, I think it's like an 800-foot elevation. That one's pushing really high terp profiles. Almost everything that came out of there that round was like over 5% terpenes. The plants were a little more stressed. I didn't think it was going to be that good of a round, but when it came to test results, they were just off the hook.
It's funny how that goes sometimes. Like stressing plants out and things like that can be stressful for the grower as well. But then you end up, trimming it up and maybe even getting those lab results, and voila, you got something special. It's always kind of hard to tell. Jason, are you back? Are you able to jump on and introduce yourself now? Sorry, we kind of glazed over for a second.
I think so. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, that
works. My name's Jason. Hello, everybody. I'm a recreational grower up here in Washington State. Started in medical, and long before that, I'd say what got me into greenhouse growing was just kind of watching the prices just ratchet down, and kind of really feeling like I needed to look into a different growing method. And so kind of at the tail end of medical, I started in with talking to Eric and getting together plans to build a greenhouse. And then, as it kind of progressed, getting licensed, really seeing everything just change drastically, it kind of occurred to me that, we grew indoors to hide from the cops. And so now in this, regulated market and legal market in Washington, it's like, I just don't get it, why everybody isn't going this direction. And I think the future really is light dep greenhouse, and it really is going that direction. But, coming from an indoor grower background for so many years, I really just took everything that I knew from indoor growing and applied it in the greenhouse. And I think my quality, terp levels, everything is just as good, if not better, in a lot of cases. Not to mention a much more enjoyable work environment, being under the sun. It's chock full of gavitas and fans and dehumidifiers, because we have pretty wet weather up here. But I grow year round, and I love growing in greenhouses. I've got one of Forever Flowering's, almost 1,000 square foot, and then I've got a few hoop houses that I run just as sort of old school polar tarp during the season. And so far so good.
That's awesome. I went to your place a couple years ago, and you're up on the islands of Washington. And one of the incredible things about your particular property is that there's bald eagles flying everywhere around the greenhouses, and it's just this magical space. And whether you're pulling tarps or an automated greenhouse or whatever, I can't imagine that being a tough place to live and grow. I was, mesmerized by the place myself, and look forward to coming back and visiting again sometime. But, how we met too is all your videos on Instagram was you going through a 50,000 square foot indoor facility on a skateboard, going from room to room to room, and it was the build out. It was the build out of this big, massive indoor facility. And basically you one day just walked away and, bought the 1,000 square foot greenhouse to kind of test this all out. And you know, I mean, I think you've really become one of the bigger sun-grown fanatics that I've seen out of the industry, just because your dramatic change from that huge build out to just literally walking away and starting fresh. And so that's an awesome situation.
Yeah, no, thank you. I was part of a tier 3 warehouse, and you know, we looked for the right space, and then we started building it out. And I was kind of sort of looking at this whole idea and kind of seeing the writing on the wall that this is not really sustainable. And I ended up leaving my percentage on the table, telling them good luck, and walking away. We ended up getting our own tier 2 license, and basically converted our medical facility into our 502 facility, which just involved a lot of fencing, cameras, and all sorts of fun stuff.
Yeah,
that has nothing to do with growing, but
well, yeah, when the funny thing is, when I visited you, it was recreational in Washington had started, but you were still medical, and so the medical people could still walk around with their jars, and you know, it was kind of chill. But where you go into the tier 2s and the regulated recreational, there's cameras and you can't do the same thing. And so it was definitely kind of a fun time. And the fun thing about Jason's greenhouse was built over his indoor grow room that was underground. There's an underground vault, and it was kind of like the old ghost town when you pulled open the door to look down in there at the old grow space that was, you know, from the Prohibition days. And now there's this big greenhouse on top of it. And it's funny how times have changed, or how far we've all come from, you know, people growing in Prohibition times to medical to recreational. It's just a whole evolution, and you definitely showcase that at your place.
yeah, we had a little 10 foot by 16 foot shed that we built essentially over the top of a matching footprint underground. And that was, you know, way back in the day, that was my little spot. Walk in this nondescript little shed, pull open the trap door, walk down the ladder. And then, you know, I didn't want to lose that because it was such a cool little room. And so we ended up building a greenhouse right over the top of that. And the entire structure sits on a basically a floating platform. And then and for a while, right before, you know, needing to scale up the veg, that was my little bedroom for the greenhouse. So
it's so classic.
It was all self-contained. Now we're kind of converting that into more of like a little storage room. But yeah, it's been an interesting journey for sure. I held on with medical as long as I possibly could, right up until literally the last day, pulled down my last harvest, and then went right into recreational. So it's kind of sad to see the old days go, but it's, you know, it also comes with the helicopter insurance, I like to call it. So
helicopter insurance for sure. Well, right on, man. I'm going to jump over to Jonathan real quick, because Jonathan, before you lose your coffee buzz, I want you to get back on that roll you had earlier. And, you know, if you think about it, all the people here, this topic, you know, light deprivation in general, I know it wasn't invented by Forever Flowering, because a lot of people online are like, you know, you didn't invent it. But I mean, you know, you really brought a technique in a sense that you made it a company that people could access all this gear and information to do light deprivation. And so let's hear a little bit about, you know, that story and your background and coming up. And
right on. Thanks, Eric. First of all, I just want to start out by giving props to all the first gen people, you know, the second gen people, all the people that really, you know, laid this foundation and blazed the trail for the rest of us to be doing what we do right now. You know, a lot of people that come into the game right now don't realize that people went to jail. You know, people went to jail, people had their properties taken away, people had their kids taken away from them. And today we're just talking about taxes, and we're talking about how do we go about filling out applications and regulations and such. And so, you know, really big up to all those people, big up to Dennis Perrone that just passed recently, and all the people that really paved the way for Prop 215. You you know, it's a different day and age right now. And so, you know, just really giving thanks and having gratitude for all those people, you know. Thankfully, you know, I've been in this industry for about 25 years, and thankfully never had any of those knocks on the door that so many people have woken up to in the middle of the night. But as far as greenhouses go, before I get into that, I just want to point out one thing. If you look behind me right here, that's a ruby red grapefruit. That's citrus growing at 2,000 feet up in the Sierras with no covering on February 3rd or 4th, wherever we are right now. So even going beyond the whole idea of the benefits of greenhouses and how they, you know, increase terp profiles, how they're, you know, really give that bling of that indoor look that so many people are looking for, we can just stop at crop insurance. We can just stop right there. You know, you're talking about a plant that's not going to get dusted with sprays going on from your neighbor or dust coming on. And when we're looking at all the different microbial tests, and you look at people, you know, Green Life Productions over in Nevada came down and gave us a little schooling on the fact that in their tests in Nevada, just from the test results, you're able to tell if the trimmer was wearing a face mask or not. And so when we're getting down to levels like that, we're really starting to look at, you know, all these different nuances that we really got to protect our crop from. Not to mention the fact that, you know, it's 81 degrees in Browns Valley in the beginning of February. So what's going to happen when your full sun crop in late September and those rains come? You know, like all of a sudden your A+ is going to maybe an A or even into a B. And in this market, the difference between an A+ and an A is whether or not you're blasting it or it's going into a jar, and that can make or break your business right there. Like you can be done right there. So where did the inspiration come from? Really living in Mendocino back in the day and pulling tarps and you know, looking at where everything was going. And me and all my friends, you know, we all ate organic, drove biodiesel, wore hemp. We were, you know, really living that lifestyle and talking that talk. And and then, but when you looked at it, like all my friends had like 50,000 watts blowing up in their garage or their barn or whatever. And it was like, okay, we're almost making it happen. So how do we really take that next step? And really the idea was, how do we reduce that carbon footprint? How do we have an income, a crop that's coming in all the time and not just that one crop? And how do we be responsible? You know, how do we be responsible not just for our own bank accounts, but for what we're doing for the community that we live in and for the planet that we're living on? And so really for me, the idea came looking at pulling tarps, and you know, it really sucked having to wake up early and pulling a tarp and then having to be back on the farm to pull the tarp at night. And so, you know, it was like, that's just for the birds right there. So automation was the next step. And you know, really you know, looking into commercial ag and seeing what's already existed, because as we know, like we didn't, for the most part, we're not inventing anything new in this industry. A lot of what we're doing is we're just borrowing things that have already been successful in other industries, and we're making it work for cannabis, right? Because yes, cannabis is a plant, but for all those people that say it's just another plant and you grow it just like the others, you know, I feel those people haven't really grown cannabis. So that was back in 04, and then started the company in 06. And as far as I know, it was the first cannabis exclusive greenhouse company in the world back in 2006. And again, you know, we know people were pulling tarps, they were putting refrigerator boxes over plants. Like it was happening, but it was the first time that it was really looked at as, how do we make this a commercial viable product for a viably commercial industry? And so really back in the day, it was just, you know, working in the quasi-legal medical scene and just taking every penny and throwing it into starting a company, you know, where so many of my friends were just buying property after property and trucks and vacations and all these things. I was just dumping it all into figuring out how to move this forward. And here we are today, you know, super grateful. And you know,
super grateful.
super grateful.
Every penny of it. Every penny went into my salary.
Fuck yeah, dude. Never let me pay his salary one day late. So, and super grateful for Eric, man. We wouldn't be here today without all your work and all your dedication, man. You are, give it up for you, Mr. Brandstad, the OMB. And so, really today it is the future of the industry, and I think it's really up to us, because on so many levels, I just really have this feeling, there's a big circle, right, of the cannabis industry, and within the cannabis industry is a smaller circle of the cannabis community, those of us that have really, given everything to make this happen. And neither of us can exist without the other at this point. It takes the industry to provide the efficiencies, the finances, and the networks, if you will, to really bring this into not only a national but a global market. But it takes the community in order to teach these folks how we do things and bring the knowledge of the plant and bring the knowledge of the cannabis community into what we're doing, so that we can really have that impact on the world, and really use business as the religion that it is today, because it is the religion that rules the world today. And I don't see any problems with corporations. I don't see any problems with business. But if we can bring, the knowledge, the sacredness, and the community that we've all built into it, then we have the opportunity to change this world in a heartbeat. And really bring forth, everything that's going on. Because what we're really doing is we're growing crystals, right? And crystals carry knowledge and information and intelligence. And so if we can, every time we're growing a plant, embed those crystals with the knowledge that we want to go out, that's going to go, I always used to love to think of, like, whenever you harvested a crop, it's like, where is this going to be smoked? Like, I know this one guy is bringing a half pound over to Hawaii, and these people are bringing an eighth with them over to Jamaica or wherever it is. And so we're spreading that knowledge everywhere. And every time somebody intakes that, then we've done our job of just spreading that love just a little bit further.
Damn, look at you, guy. Go right on. Well said. Thank you.
Yeah, man.
Man. Well, I mean, I'm super grateful for this whole light dep scene and these crystal growers. I'm a miner, so you guys grow the crystals and I'll mine the things, and like that. I appreciate the educational piece too, and I wanted to jump over to Farmer Tom real quick, because Farmer Tom mentioned what he was doing at the community college and the education level, and I kind of wanted you to tell us a little bit more about that. And I wanted to also ask you about the feds one more time. And so the feds came to your house and came into your greenhouse and hung out with you at your place, or was this at an undisclosed location?
No, they came to my house.
Holy shit.
Yeah, they came to my house in 2015.
That's
in
awesome.
August for 2 days. Yeah.
Okay, so they came to your house and saw your grow, saw your greenhouse, saw where you kept your safe. I mean, what didn't they see?
They pretty much saw, everything. We've, just been medical growers for a long time now, and we were abiding by all the rules. So I really didn't have much to hide, and I would have rather educated them on kind of where the industry came from and all of our roots. And, we were all, we grow organic vegetables along with our cannabis. And for us, it's more like a lifestyle, a health choice for my wife. So, she can, if she can't live in the city, she can't be around, petrochemical products, perfumes, any of that kind of stuff. So we created this lifestyle, and, it's worked for us. And having them here, they've actually become pretty good friends. I'm in contact with them. They're scientists, basically. This is agents from the CDC and NIOSH, and NIOSH stands for National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. And basically, they're PhD scientists, and they wanted to get ahead of the ball on a worldwide platform before another group did it. These guys are the premier people on workers' safety and health, and they wanted to get a jump on cannabis. And this all really went back to Denver in like 2011 and 12 when the police union up there filed a complaint with OSHA saying that they were afraid their officers were being poisoned with molds and stuff. When they would go into these grows, the lights would be off for a couple days and they'd be in there like cleaning up, that there would be powdery mildews and, you know, black molds and stuff like that. So the Obama administration allocated funds to do this workplace health and safety evaluation. It's basically a scientific study. And so they came twice. And the first time it was my dime. And, you know, I'm being an advocate for so long. I mean, we showed them, we smoked around them and, you know, showed them our lifestyle. And the second time was more business oriented, and they were collecting data for production and processing. So each day I did a different task. We had a total of like 70 plants that year. And by the time they came in the later part of October, we had 10 left. So the first day was all about big leafing and harvesting. So we harvested the 10 plants and then big leafed and then moved it into the drying room. The second day was all about bucking. So we were taking the buds off of the stems for them every different way we could come with, from the hand to the little tin can method to the scissors to whichever way we could to give them data. And then the third day was all about trimming. We had machine trims, hand trim that hooked us up with a cyber glove that tracked repetitive motion and collected the data. And all that data was compiled and yeah, so now it's a scientific study paid for by the, you know, the government and the people. So it's in the Library of Congress, and I guess you could look it up under cannabis and organic cannabis farm. So
organic cannabis is the key word in that study, or what you showed them. Basically, it was, you know, coming from an organic place and using greenhouses and things like that, it sounds like. So I mean, it sounds like you showed them the side that we all kind of are all an advocate for.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I wanted to show them what we were all about and what we came from, and really give them a good perception of where we all came from and who we really are as a community.
How did they choose you again? I forgot. Did you say, how did they actually come to you? Like, because you got busted a long time ago, or?
No. In Washington State, we did a news piece with Como News. They asked me to do an open blast, and I said yes, and everybody thought I was crazy. But I thought, well, this is a really good opportunity to educate them on it, because they were coming to the farmers markets at that time, and their idea of hash was one thing. It was BHO, and people were killing themselves. So I go, well, this is a perfect opportunity. It's like, you know, it's January, February, and I can get like my friends together and we'll give them a 4-hour symposium on everything concentrates. So Joe Wynn did an open blast for him outside under a tent. I had Farmer Joe Parker doing a closed loop system inside, and we had samples of bubble hash, of course, and CO2 and FICO and that kind of stuff, to kind of show them that, wow, there's a lot more here than just BHO. And when you ban all concentrates, all you're really doing is, you know, these kids will continue to blow themselves up. So it's better to tax it or regulate it. And so that kind of led to me getting some exposure up here on concentrates. And then the kid blew themselves up in a BHO explosion in New Mexico. And then the union got in touch with me, and then we got in touch with OSHA. And then I took them over to JD's from Skunk Farm Research. We spent an afternoon educating them about hydrocarbons and why these kids were blowing themselves up. And from that, they picked me and my wife, because we had already interacted with them, to do the health hazard evaluation. It was initiated by the union. And usually these are punitive type things, you know, like we're going to come in and find out, you know, what your industry is up to. But after talking with them, and we were the first ones, you know, I figured, man, we might as well just go in there and lay a baseline. I'd rather it be me than some suit in a, you know, in some other location. So we agreed to do it. They made my farm a secure location. I had to pretty much be vetted by the DOJ to grow cannabis. We went through a lot of hoops. It was actually finished in 2016, and at that point, April 2016, and it went up, I guess, online for a few hours, and then they pulled it down because it was an election year, and then they kind of kicked the ball to August, and August said, oh, it's an election year, let's kick the ball to November. November comes around, they go, we got a new administration, let's kick the ball to February. Kicked it to February of 2017. They go, oh, we've got a new appointee for the Department of Health and Human Services. We're going to kick it till April. I contacted James Couch, who's the chief scientist on it. We're in contact. I called him and he said he was on home and maternity leave that day and he didn't have any updates on it. But the next morning, the box showed up overnight at my door. It had, I don't know, 4 or 5 reports and then posters that we can hang in our workplace, basically of what they found and what they suggested. So, and then, like I said, on April 7th, it went up online again. And then in August, I got my own website. And in between that, I've gotten emails from them saying that Kalos is using this as their baseline for workplace health and safety. They're using the report that, our SOPs that, created the report. So, yeah, that's kind of what we did with them. That's pretty much the whole story.
Wow, that's amazing, Tom. I've been wanting to kind of hear that story. I know I've seen you and known you for a while, but I never really get a chance. We're always so busy. And then so to jump back into the greenhouse talk a little bit more, I wanted to go over to Josh and Kelly. They've been patiently waiting as our hosts, and they're good at being patient with some of these things. And so now I wanted to jump into some more greenhouse talk on the Wallapini side of things. And also, you guys got a hoop house this year too. And so, what have we been seeing in the Wallapini? What are we seeing in the other greenhouse, especially up where you guys are in your special climate? Like, tell us a little bit about the closed loop farm and your greenhouses.
First of all, Jonathan, thank you so much. Brother, love everything that you have to say and really bringing it back to the fact that, we are growing crystals. We're growing sentient beings. We're affecting people's lives every single day with every single smoke that we put out, every bud. We could be affecting their lives as a whole or just that minute. So it's just so important to, thank you for that.
So on our land, we have 5 different greenhouses. We live far up north in the mountains. We're in a big mountain canyon and we don't get full sun exposure every day. So we really have to take advantage of our suns, of the sunlight. And when we light dep, we usually are light depping right around the time when the sun's hitting the mountain, even in the middle of the summer. So luckily we don't get a lot of heat in there, towards the evening and stuff. But we have 5 different greenhouses. A circular one that's submerged into the earth about 9 feet, and then a really long Wallapini that's 40 by 70 that's dug. It's on a hillside, and on the back wall is 10 feet in the ground, and in the front wall is around 6 feet to the ground. And it's got a big flat, an angled roof on it. And we also have a hoop house that we got from Forever Flowering. We've gotten lots of equipment from Forever Flowering for our other stuff, but we also build greenhouses from wood and local materials from our land. What really works for us best is a flow-through style design for our greenhouse. We do get a lot of rain in the summer, and also we can get it really early in the fall, so we really like to use our greenhouses and utilize it more as a roof without ever, our walls never come down in the summer. We only have the summer walls come down in the springtime, or only in the spring.
As soon as our temperatures change really drastically, in the evening, as soon as it starts to become summertime and we're having really hot days and cold nights, because that's what happens up in the mountains where we are, it's absolutely imperative that those sides and the end walls never get closed, and that's something that we've been learning, through time. And if we want to be able to grow these really beautiful varieties that are really important to get out on the market in our northern area, we have to be able to light dep. And we do it old school. We're for the birds.
We like birds.
We like birds.
We would love to have an automated greenhouse, please. One day.
Yeah, I mean, I still pull some tarps myself. I know how it goes. I wanted to know, do you guys use any fans or any kind of electricity in any of your greenhouses?
We really don't. We used to, and we just realized that it's really not necessary. We have enough airflow on the mountainside that we're on to just open it up. And the way that the mountains breathe is that we have like an uptake of air in the morning time and then a downtake of air in the evening. So it really blows through all of the greenhouses. And we really suggest to people, you know, that before you do the layout of your greenhouses, you stand on your land, you find out the airflow, you find out exactly what's going on with your sun and your moon rising,
your dew points, your
dew
freeze points. We have frost, so where does it frost first? Where does it frost second? Where's the sun in the winter? Where's the sun in the summer? We have to think about that pretty seriously. And we also purposefully build our greenhouses to have a natural flow through design. And we've worked really hard at trying to make this design work. And now we've got to a point where we don't have fans.
Yeah.
So we're walking into a totally peaceful environment that has beds that are attached to the earth. We have different pieces. We have different kinds of dirt on our land. So we take different parts of dirt from our land and we make dirt, and we've been layering it over the years. So we have a unique style of dirt in our that's not non-commercial.
Soil's number one focus.
Non-commercial, and then we build a gravity-fed greenhouse, a tea house, to feed our teas into our greenhouses and stuff. So we like having different environments, and we grow the plants differently based off different greenhouse styles.
And we definitely realize that utilizing geothermal along with our greenhouses has been a tremendous step forward for us. You know, we started out in big outdoor and guerrilla growing, and then moved all the way into greenhouses, and we thought that we maybe needed to have a lot of fans and lights and all this stuff, and we're pretty much down to just the cover and light depping, and we really feel like we've got it figured out now.
Well, you guys have consulted on greenhouses other than just where you are, as well as helped design some that I think we helped you get, or just provided some materials for in Colorado. And so did the Colorado Wallapini, and for everybody that maybe doesn't know, Wallapini greenhouses are in the earth. They're, you know, mostly a roof sticking up. And I know you guys have done a few different designs. The one in Colorado, how did that go?
Unbelievable. They're just so absolutely stoked with it. They haven't had any issues in it at all. It's definitely the one that they put their #1 strains in, and the ones that they're really looking towards to, you know, produce maybe mother plants or possibly for cups.
And they also have a high elevation with strong winds. So, you know, as long as the sides and the roof are kind of, you know, battened down pretty well, the Wallapini offers a really good break for the wind and stuff like that. So yeah, they've had a really good time. They're expanding on their farm and getting into hemp farming and doing other things. So I think it's been helpful to their expansion.
Yeah. And also there's tremendous differences between the day and the night in Colorado as well. And it just really helps to put it into the ground because you're just not having those extremes. The geothermal sort of, you know, aids in that.
The one thing I think we would just like to say is that in a time where like places like Cape Town have run out of water and California's seen severe droughts, water saving growing techniques can potentially outweigh the need for, you know, being able to get 5 cycles in 1 year, because a lot of times people use pots and greenhouses in order to get a fast turnover rate, maybe in California, so they can get 5 rounds in a year. And maybe that's why they shy away from using beds, because beds, you might have to let them veg for a week or 2 to kind of get their roots into the ground, but it's going to save you up to 50 to 70% water. And it's also going to allow your microorganisms to feed your terpenes and terpene levels and the crystal content. And we think that's really valuable.
And also tremendous amount, you know, we need to look at every single cost right now. It's so important. How can we reduce our cost and still grow the fire? You know, how can we get out the highest quality product? And sometimes we really do need to look at our systems fully and figure out, you know, what's going to be best for us.
For sure. And I know cost is.
I would like to add one thing, if I could, Eric. Just sort of talking about, you know, for years I showed people how to make hash using water and ice, and, you know, it's very simple for extracting resin, but the real trick is to drying it. And the drying it, depending on where you are, becomes a different recipe. And I'm sure with greenhouses, it's the same thing, where someone might be hearing Dragonfly talk about how we just leave the sides of the greenhouses open, where in a different place, maybe in Holland or wherever, it might not be the same thing. So for those of you that are listening, understand that each person specifically talking is talking about their specific environment, and it may be a little bit different depending on where you're growing and what type of greenhouse you're using, etc. So I just wanted to mention that.
And that's a good point. One of the things I've learned over the 11 years I've been doing this is that cannabis does want to be free. It doesn't want to be always trapped. And when we trap things, we have to deal with trapping air, for instance. When we trap air, it heats up. And so one of the things about greenhouses in general, greenhouses were invented for wintertime. There wasn't anybody on a farm on a hot summer day that went, oh shit, I need a greenhouse. And so when we have cannabis growers love to grow in a super hot, sunny spot. And so what do we have? We have kind of two things that don't make sense. We have a greenhouse in this hot ass spot and a grower that's trying to grow inside of a greenhouse in this hot ass spot, and it just doesn't work. And that's why we see a lot of the high failure rates for people and the discouragement of greenhouses sometimes, is because it's almost turned into this hybrid indoor grow room. It's this idea that we get free sun, and then the greenhouse is, you know, this controlled environment. Not everybody can control their environment, so to speak. Controlling an environment is temp and humidity for the most part. And yeah, we can work on the temp and humidity in the greenhouse, but what can we do about the leaf surface temperature, maybe the ground temperature, the soil temperatures? All these other surfaces heat up as well as the air temperature. And so when we have surfaces, soils, things heating up, we create these hostile environments. And when we create hostile environments, cannabis just gives up and basically sends out those invitations for bugs, PM, molds, and whatever can happen. And so what we found over the last few years, no matter what state we're in, for the most part, in the United States, you know, we do a lot of our greenhouses, especially this one back here, our Northern Latitude kind of cookie cutter, because I believe greenhouses should be flexible in the sense that they can have winter mode and summer mode both together. And that means the ability to open up and to close up. Most greenhouses, you know, for the most part, run on two ways of ventilation. Mechanical ventilation, that's sealed up with exhaust fans and intakes. And then there's passive ventilation with the greenhouse ability to open up and close the side walls and the roof vent. And so basically what happens is that, you know, the flexibility comes with having the advantages to open the greenhouse up or close it should you need to. What we found is that sealed greenhouses, in the most part, that are trapping air and heating up in these hot summer spots really have to use mechanical ventilation because there's no other way to exchange that air. At some points, the air can keep up for the exchange rate. You know, 1 air exchange per minute is National Greenhouse Manufacturer Standards. But if the fans can't keep up, we have trapped air that's heating up. And then what we have is plant transpiration, which turns into condensation in greenhouses. And so condensation is everybody's biggest fear. And if people have condensation, 9 times out of 10, it's from plant sweat. And so what we have to do is back up and help avoid that plant sweat. And the one way we can do that is through cooling the surfaces. And cooling the surfaces isn't just cooling the air in order to do that. To cool the surfaces, we try to open up the greenhouse, use the proper greenhouse covers like these diffused greenhouse covers you see behind me, and also using things like white ground cover and things that avoid sun or solar gain. Black ground cover, black grow bags, all these things encourage a lot more surface temp than you'd want. And so by using tan grow bags and a white ground cover and even a little infrared thermometer to point and shoot the leaf surface temperature of a plant can really tell you a lot more than the typical temp and humidity thermostat that a lot of people want to look at for the word control, I guess you could say. And so, you know, we really want to make greenhouses flexible. We want to keep cannabis free. And then if we need to fight Mother Nature, we can do that closer to the season extending or the winter time. And I know that one of the things that comes up with all this is also the quality, because we can't just get a greenhouse and go, okay, I'm going to get the killer quality and win all the cups like JD and, you know, all these other people. It really takes these, you know, the correct method to the madness, along with knowing how to deal with the method to the madness in these specific areas. These specific areas need these pieces of equipment to operate how the grower needs to at certain times of the year so that they can actually make it work for themselves. And granted, there are some exceptions to the rules, but what we saw this year was sealed greenhouses, mechanically ventilated greenhouses that only had the way to move the airs through the exhaust fans and the intakes, whether it's a wet wall or not. Even people with wet walls had air coming in at 75 and leaving the greenhouse at 130 degrees. And most of the sealed greenhouses that we talked to this year didn't have the fans calculated properly, so they did have solar gain, which created that hostile environment. And the last thing that happens is if you lose electricity, you're screwed. And so a passively ventilated greenhouse can help avoid problems if you do lose electricity. And, you know, something maybe everybody can answer on real quick is that, you know, I see a lot of people talk about, you know, indoor being better than sun-grown, indoor being better than greenhouses. I mean, some of the greenhouse material I've seen is hard to compare to indoor, or it's hard to know the difference. And so there are consumers out there that don't really know the difference. They just want good weed. And then there's also the retailers, let's say, that are really trying to stick with indoors better than sun-grown, and then they change the price or they make the price lower. Does anybody see any of this going on in their farms, or pricing, or who they deal with as far as sun-grown or greenhouse versus indoor and prices wise?
Well, I just want to say really quickly, I think what happens on the market is anytime light dep or greenhouse is super good, it'll get marketed as indoor just because it fetches that higher price, right? And so I think it's really doing a disservice to the greenhouse light dep sector of the market. But at the same time, I mean, you can't really blame people for wanting to get a better price or actually move their product, you know? So it's kind of a conundrum, and that's where I think it comes down to, you know, constantly comes back to education, you know, and I think as we still are getting more lab results and more scientific studies are being done, you know, we're really able to start seeing, you know, what terpenes are brought out by sunshine, you know, where does UV come into the factor, you know, and so one thing I just wanted to say about growing in the greenhouse, though, going back, is, you know, really again comes back to having a proper greenhouse design. You know, I've been living up and growing in the Sierras here for, you know, well over a decade and a half up here in the Sierras, and we get up into the hundreds pluses, and I've never had an exhaust fan on my greenhouse. I've never had a cooling system on my greenhouse. And I think a lot of people are being steered into the direction of thinking that they need to have HVAC systems or wet walls to really, or even high pressure fogging systems to mitigate something that doesn't necessarily need to be mitigated. Coming from an indoor environment, people are usually focused on what's the temp and humidity, and that's all that they're looking at. But once you get into a greenhouse, you really have the ability to start looking at leaf surface temperatures, at root zone temperatures, and that's where we really start getting into, you know, the true growing environment for the plant. And so the ambient temperature of the greenhouse can be super hot, but if you get the cooler temperatures down on the leaf and in the root zone, you can actually go around having to have any sort of mechanical cooling and such, you know, as long as you've got that proper passive cooling and you've got a high quality material that the sun's coming through. A lot of people like to skimp on their greenhouse cover and put up some sort of like visqueen or, you know, just a single layer poly, but really that's what the sun's coming through, right? And so that's your separation between your source of the plant growth and the plant. And so really one of the best things that a person can do, and the most cost effective to improve their greenhouse, is to just put a proper cover on it. If you have a polyweave cover that's got a high diffusion level and even blocks out a minor amount of the sun to really soften the light, you're gonna have plants that get more blingy because they're not in that harsh environment of the sun just beating down on them, and they're not in a visqueen material, which is actually magnifying the light and creating hot spots within the greenhouse environment. And as soon as you have that hostile environment, that's when molds, mildews, pests, and diseases are going to move in, because your plant's not healthy. So it's basically sending out this message of, I need to be decomposed, right? And so nature's just coming in and like, oh, we're just going to take this one out. This one's not healthy. And so it really comes back to creating that beautiful growing environment, both in the air and then in the soil. But that's like a whole nother rant right there.
Yeah, the soil is a whole nother thing. Anybody have any comments on the using the greenhouse? Siobhan, we haven't heard from you a little bit. Tell us about your greenhouse and style. Are you guys manual dep, auto deps?
Well, currently for Blessed Coast, we're pretty lacking, to be honest. But my background in greenhouses was my dad did black box, and I moved into greenhouses as the market was still getting prices for indoor for dep.
Tell people black box for that.
Yeah, you used the term black box. That was awesome.
Yeah. So, but I mean, that was dad, you know. But I then moved into just falling in love with the fact that it was outdoor and I could be producing high quality to sell at a better rate. But no, we need greenhouses for Blessed Coast. So hopefully that'll be happening this year. But I missed my days of pulling tarps. I'll be completely honest. You know, it was there was a comment made about the trash and the just get a proper greenhouse. Essentially, that was the biggest thing that really killed me about this industry was the trash. And so I'm happy that we're moving into, you know, a better slate for that. But also, Jonathan, I wanted to say thank you for bringing up Dennis Perone, honoring that and honoring our forefathers in this. Yes, thank you. Also, I think that the leaning towards the testing comment was also really where we're going with this. We're really going to have to step it up as far as cleanliness and greenhouses. And yay, crystals!
Did your dad actually use black boxes to black box each plant, or was that just a term that he used?
They dug theirs into the ground and then covered it.
Yeah. That's awesome, because my first experience in Humboldt was in 92, 93, and people were actually using cardboard boxes to individually black box each plant, and so that's where the term black boxing kind of came from.
Yeah, I remember those.
Okay.
But no, this was in the ground, dug with a backhoe, also called a PDH, pre-dug hole, just in case.
No, that's awesome.
Funny.
Yeah, when I was up there, everybody was calling it black boxing, and black boxing, the weed actually sucked. I mean, it was really terrible looking herb at the time, because the people that I was dealing with were really young, and we were all just, you know, like, what is this and what are we doing? And everybody, it wasn't very organized at all, and there was no elders guiding anybody along the way. We didn't have our family up there for sure, and so
I recall it going back. The black box kind of faded out and it went back to outdoor, and yeah, it kind of converted it. And then the whole greenhouse and dep, I mean, it just, the market, you know, changed everything up. It was so interesting. I miss the days of pulling tarps. I have rattlesnake stories, and like, I would love an automatic greenhouse because tarps, rattlesnakes fucking flying through the air, like.
I don't think people understand what you're saying, and so what the
help me out, Eric, help me out.
When you have a tarp laying on the ground for a day in the summertime, snakes and all kinds of things get into that tarp, and then when you go pull the tarp, the tension of it makes everything spring out of the tarp, and so you can find rattlesnakes and mice and all kinds of stuff. And I mean, pulling tarps, yeah, it isn't just the pain in the ass of actually pulling the tarp. It's like, what's hiding in the tarp? Did it get rained on? And is it full of puddles and shit? Like,
you just never know. You just never know. Yeah, I do though. You know, I want to complain about those days, but I miss it. I miss riding dirt bikes and having, you know, a good time. I'm coming to you guys now from my office because I'm so fancy. But yeah. What a crazy ride to be on, and what an interesting topic, the whole greenhouse effect. So yeah, thanks for inviting me on.
Yeah, it's good to have you. And yeah, I mean, you've been around it for a while. So, I mean, the history that I talk about, you definitely know. And that was the thing. I talked to some people over the course of the years, and the people that went to Humboldt in the 70s were black boxing in order to sex plants. And so they would actually use boxes all over the little plants to sex them before they'd put them out into the field. And so light dep greenhouse, light dep black box, light dep in general has been part of the history of cannabis, you know, for a really long time, longer than I know. And I've traced it back, like I said, into the 70s of Humboldt County. And so it's really, you know, great to be here in a sense that, you know, all these years later, I'm in a company and the presence of all these people doing this light dep thing. And it's really like, you know, part of the culture now. It's blowing up. And so does anybody have any other points they want to bring up?
Yeah, I wanted to say really quickly, Eric, and to everybody, is that I feel like, and all of us probably could relate to this too, is that, you know, talking to consumers in the market, you know, the sun grown and the light dep makes you feel better. It just does. When you smoke something that's from a light dep, not only is it beautiful and flavorful and it has a lot of terpenes, but it makes you feel better. It makes you be ready for your day. You know, it resembles more of where that plant came from rather than coming from an indoor space, you know, like you all were saying earlier, with a lot of the lights and the buzz and the vibration and the electricity. So I really wanted to say that. And also moving over to
also the diffused light is really important in California. I think in Southern Oregon, I think the sunlight gets too hot and it can blast the plants and the buds, and then the terpenes are volatile on the plants even when they're growing. So sometimes, I mean, people are exploring, you know, having shade cloths in their greenhouse in the middle of the day in Southern Oregon and Northern California and Southern, where it's super hot. And there's even some misters and stuff being used above it to continue having the right type of humidity that it takes to grow crystals. And then, you know, there's all kinds of different light spectrums and come in. But one thing we're exploring is UVD, which is putting a disco ball in our greenhouse. And that really brings on the funk.
Yeah, the UVD.
So, you know, just check into that. That's all we're going to say.
It really helps.
I'm going to get a disco ball and hang it in here just for you guys and see what kind of terps we bring out.
And maybe Skunkman Sam, I don't know, I would be interested to hear about your progression of, you know, greenhouse growing and some of maybe your light deprivation experiences.
Yeah, where you?
Is it on?
It's on. Go ahead. Yep.
Howdy. I've been growing in greenhouses ever since the first year I grew cannabis in Santa Cruz. That was in maybe 72 or something around like that. And that was just a homemade primitive greenhouse. And friends of mine were doing darkening for sexing, not for flowering, but for sexing. And that was in Northern California. But
tell them what we just talked about the sexing.
Yeah, one of the problems with the sexing was at that time they didn't really understand what they were doing. So they would darken it for 2 weeks until the plant showed sex. Whereas what the research that I found when we were doing the research in Holland was that most indica varieties you can darken for 1 day, and then 2 weeks later they will show sex. They will not stay flowering. And with veg, with sativa varieties, sometimes they need to be darkened 2 or 3 days at the very most. But then 2 weeks later, they show the sex. And so I mean, I had a friend who produced thousands and thousands of seedlings and then darkened them off just for sexing to sell early known female plants to people. And a few times because he darkened them for 2 weeks, they would not come back. So the customers were rather irate that they had these little plants that were, 2 feet tall and flowered off, and they would not return veg.
Can you also tell the story of how you discovered like greenhouse light dep in Holland?
Well, greenhouse light dep, what happened was I went into a chrysanthemum greenhouse because I was interested in building my own greenhouse. Or buying one or renting one or whatever. And so I saw the chrysanthemums were being darkened to induce flowering. And a light went on in my head, and I went, Jesus Christ. I mean, I had seen people darken plants with a tarp in the late 70s and early 80s, but I wasn't interested because I wanted a greenhouse that was multiple acres. And you can't hand darken multiple acres. Well, actually, you can if you have enough labor, but it's so. Once I saw what darkening could do, I instantly understood what this was for cannabis, and so that was I don't know, maybe '86 or something like that. And but once I saw that, I never stepped back. For the Netherlands, you need darkening because you can grow multiple crops a year, or you can grow one big, good, heavy crop and darken it and get it out before the cold it comes, and your heating bills are $10,000 a week.
And can you also comment, Sam, on earlier Micah was talking, and he mentioned how he kind of likes to keep them a little bit smaller, which might be perfect for what he's doing and producing super high quality flowers. But you came in as a sort of like, oh, I'd like to have really big greenhouses, and maybe just talk to why that is.
Well, the main reason is I like big plants. A lot of the work I'm doing is not commercial production. It's breeding work. And for breeding work, I start seeds, thousands and thousands of seeds. And then what I do is I want to pick the best plants. And to pick the best plant from seed, it's very difficult to do with a little 1 or 2 foot plant. You grow it 12 feet tall, and you get a really good idea of its positive and negative qualities.
Right.
And for a breeder, it's really required. So that's why I had a very high ceiling. My ceiling was, I don't know, maybe 20 feet or so, and I could grow 15-foot tall plants if I want, get 3, 4, 5 kilos of dried material.
Boom. Thanks, Sam.
Let me ask you, Sam, about the sexing one more time. You know, for people that are, you know, maybe don't have a lot of power still in Humboldt, or, you know, these craft farmers, if they were to sex their plants, like you were saying, how long, it's depending on strain, you would say, but if somebody was to do it, would you say to darken it for a day or two instead of the 2 weeks like your friend had done? Because I experienced the same thing. I've seen plants that didn't come back out of the veg, and it was a huge pain in the ass. So could you talk a little bit more about that, like your recommendation?
Is my mic on?
You're on.
Okay.
Yeah.
The main thing is that cannabis will take 2 weeks to express its sex, but 1 or 2 days of darkening is enough to trip the expression 2 weeks later. That's the main thing you have to understand. With earlier varieties, only 1 day. If it's a very late equatorial variety, maybe it takes 2 or 3 days at the very most. And then when you put them back on a long cycle, 2 weeks later they sex, but they don't stay flowering. They are totally veg, and you grow them really, really big and then flower them off, and you know what sex they are.
That's almost like at the end of that, you should also say, you're welcome, because that was a gem right there for those who watch.
Dude.
Absolute game changer. Thank you for dropping that knowledge.
Yeah, that's all I needed. Talk to you guys later. No, that was awesome. Micah, I saw you were going to chime in a little bit ago. Were you about to drop some wisdom on us?
Well, I don't know if I'd call it wisdom, but I was going to say something. It was
you got to follow Sam, bro.
Yeah, Jesus. Him and Jonathan are hard to follow.
No, we love y'all. Come on, you got it.
Now, what was I going to say? It was about, you were talking about, and Jonathan kind of commented on the difference between indoor looking quality and how you can
the pricing
and stuff like that, right? So I think that light deprivation, when done right, can absolutely compete with the indoor market, both in the testing results and also the way bag appeal, the way it looks. And we did this kind of fun little test with a friend of ours this last year where we gave him some of the same cuts we were running, same nutrient program, everything that we were doing. He ran it indoors, we ran it in a light deprivation, and we tested it at the end of the year, and we ended up being higher on the THC test and, you know, everything else that that we both tested for, which was basically the THC thing was the competition. So sometimes when I hear people talking about the indoor, there's no way you can compete with the indoor market. I think that that's a false. I think that, and I agree with what the people at Dragonfly were saying, is that everything about it's better. It's grown naturally in the sun, tastes better for you. And then with pricing, like with what, and this is just kind of my personal opinion or whatever. I think that, in California, which is where I'm at, I don't know if everyone's in California or not, but, there's a big hiccup in the market right now with what's going on. And we've got this big change in regulation and dispensaries and all this other stuff that's going on. And it's hard to compete with the indoor market, especially in Southern California. But I think that what could end up being the savior to what we're passionate about, sun-grown farming, is I think that with pricing going up the way that it is, these people that are going into dispensaries and all of a sudden seeing their price tag being, $80, $90 for the 8 that they used to get for $45 or $50 is definitely going to be a way that I'm hoping sun-grown farmers can survive. I think it's going to be a positive for us.
Well, yeah, I mean,
educate. Sorry, I didn't mean to
lab
take over,
tests, I
but-
think, would help that. You know what I mean? Like, can't we quantify things with lab tests sometimes? Because I know that I've talked to a few lab companies that have said over the course of time, some of the greenhouse material they've been testing has tested higher in the THC, CBD, and even the terpene percentages. And I know that the terpene companies, Bubble Man, maybe you might know something about that, with greenhouse material and the terpene production that you might have heard about or known.
Let me see, am I unmuted? Yeah, okay, yeah, from, right from Tony's mouth, almost always the lights at the greenhouse is going to produce like a way higher level of terpene production. Not just a smaller amount, but like a substantially larger amount. And not to change the subject completely, but while I have the mic, one of the things Sam was mentioning about greenhouse triggering flowering as well, particularly in, I guess it was in like close to the equator countries where they have 12 hours and 12 hours of light and darkness. And often people are trying to grow with added light, additional light. They'll maybe put it on for another 5 or 6 hours. Sam had an interesting bit of information to share on tropical cannabis growing.
Basically, what we found is that in the Netherlands, when I would grow big, giant plants at 10, 12 feet tall over the winter, I could give as little as I was using these little 60-watt blue incandescent agricultural balls from Philips. And so they were geared towards, but they were only 60 watts. And I would use one of those for every 10 square meters. So that's 100 square feet. And it absolutely prevented flowering. Not only that, but you could use as little as just instead of giving them 6 or 8 hours of light to keep them veg, what you could do is just in the middle of the night, give them 2 hours of light. That's all they needed.
I just heard that.
Yeah, I've been doing this for 30 years.
That's a big one for people that have been, especially in countries where, he was mentioning like only having one generator, only being able to turn on enough light in one section of the greenhouse. You could do a quarter here, a quarter there, a quarter there. And instead of leaving it on for that 8 additional hours.
I'll tell you how severe I've done it. I actually was storing plants under refrigeration at about plus 3-4 degrees. So they're in a refrigerator with lights. And all I gave them was 15 minutes of light 4 times a day. So every 5 hours, I'd give them, or for 5 or 6 hours, I'd give them 15 minutes of light. Totally prevented flowering. They stayed veg. They also weren't growing because it was so cold. All I was trying to do was keep the plants alive as a library.
Did you see that there was any reduction in actual growth?
No growth, practically. I mean, under 3 degrees, there's practically zero growth. I wasn't trying to grow them. I was trying to maintain them.
Yeah, yeah. But I guess my question is, you know, I think some people would argue, well, they keep all these lights on because not only do they want to keep the photo period going, but they're also trying to have the plant grow at the same time. So I'm just curious if you saw any difference at any point in your experiences where you could see like a difference in growth rates.
The more lumens and the more hours, of course, you're going to get more growth, of course. But that wasn't my goal. My goal was to, I had big plants in the ground, which I conserved in my greenhouse. I had a small collection on ebb and flow tables under halides, and just as a library. And I had a third collection in, I had specially made like a refrigerator with lights built into it, which, and those, I gave them as little as an hour a day, broken up in 15 minutes, so that they never received really long periods of dark at any one time.
It's awesome information. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, I just met a guy in Humboldt. A lot of my research comes from old school growers in Humboldt County, and they said the same thing Sam was saying as far as keeping the plants in veg. The guy came here recently and did a greenhouse tour, and he goes, no, I only have my light on in the middle of the night for 1 hour in the wintertime to keep them in veg. And I thought 1 hour. And so, yeah, to save on generator and power and all these things that people deal with, they can't use all this electricity or access to it maybe in the middle of the night, you know. So when he told me that in the veg period he only uses the light for 1 hour in the middle of the night, I was just like, holy crap. And now I'm starting to hear little bits and pieces of it. And then of course now Sam is kind of confirming that whole thing too. So I mean, I'm gonna try it, you know, like I think it's pretty cool. I want to try the sexing stuff and play around with all those things. I like doing experiments and
Sam,
so
another good thing to remind yourself is lots of lumens, less time, like an hour, but less lumens, maybe 2 hours.
To prevent flowering.
To prevent flowering. You know,
right.
So keep that in mind as your sort of recipe as you get into it.
Well,
so,
yeah, because
oh, sorry. So I just want to make sure I'm hearing you right. So the thought process is don't give them a long period of no light. You're saying just break it up and you're turning the light on for 15 minutes every hour.
Well, I've heard that, and I know Sam was saying that for his library, and part of his experimentation was to keep these plants from growing, but to keep the library. And so he said he dosed them in a couple times, 15 minutes at a time, if I heard you right, Sam, and then 2 hours. And what he were just confirming was the 2 hours for a low lumen light.
Right, exactly. If you had higher lumens, you could use maybe less time.
And that's what I think up in Humboldt, the guy's using like 1,000-watt light, just I don't know how many or whatever, but he does this burst of light for 1 hour. So I'm imagining if it's 1 hour working for him, it's probably a higher powered light. I should ask him. But that was how he dealt with power concerns and generators and all these things, because he was laughing at all the people that run generators for a few hours in the morning, a few hours at night. They're getting fuel deliveries, you know, every week out to their mountain. And, you know, this dude's using the light one time, and his growth rate seems to be fine for what he's doing. Because, again, a lot of people are trying to just keep their plants in check, and then the sun does the production.
Yeah, that's really important to keep everything efficient. You know, we're talking about water, now we're talking about ways to save electricity, and that's the biggest thing about the greenhouse, is to try to become more efficient. So, you know, utilizing less light within the greenhouse any way we can is super, super important. Thanks for that, Sam. That was sweet. And create that conversation is important. As far as, you know, terpenes and stuff, I mean, that's most definitely what we find. And we even try and really sell our herb at El Possible as greenhouse. And we almost force it, you know, and people are like, well, you know, people are da-da-da-da-da. I'm like, well, guess what? People can learn now that this is how sweet it looks.
We've even not sold it if somebody was going to sell it as indoor.
Yeah.
That happens
We're
to
just
us
like,
all the
guess what?
time.
It's
We're like,
not.
well, actually, it's not. We're not going to sell it to you.
And,
So
at the,
it's been important to us, that really beautiful, amazing, gorgeous, smelly flowers can be grown under the sun in a light depth situation.
Even as
with
far north in
minimal
British
inputs.
Columbia, and it's not just a California thing or Colorado or whatever.
Or
It happens in
equatorial.
Washington. It happens in Oregon, and we've even sent. We had our herb, and we entered it into the High Times Cannabis Cup in Denver.
The first legal one.
The first legal year, and it was greenhouse weed from our place. And we kind of like used gnomes, the Gnome Express,
to get it there.
And we got in the top 10.
We
and
did. We
it was,
came in 8th out of like
it-
450 of just across the board. Didn't matter if it was
and it was
organic,
indoor, outdoor. It was just the Colorado theme at the time, and boom, there we were, just up on the big screen. We didn't even go to the thing because we were just like, we'll see.
And when we told Danny Danko that it was BC Greenhouse, he almost fell over. It was really awesome. Beautiful moment.
And we were walking around there for the weekend. We were kind of smoking a bunch of people's weed, and we were like, there's not like actually that much flavor in a bunch of this stuff. So I think that, we might actually do pretty good. And so we did. But so I think hearing has a lot to do with it too. But the greenhouse effect is an effect.
It means something.
Flavor's important to people. I mean, that's the main thing. Being able to open the bag and smell it is one of the first things that everybody looks for. If it doesn't have any smell, it's not going to go much further than that. And so, obviously curing is a big part of the process for everybody. And, you can see Jason in the background there. It looks like you got some shit drying right now. And
I do.
Yeah, the whole curing process is really crucial to retain those terpenes. But, you're also growing up north in the islands and kind of places that, most people would probably say that it would be difficult.
It is. And, a lot of people laughed at me when I talked about getting a greenhouse in Western Washington. I was definitely the first customer of Northern Lights Gardening, picking up a greenhouse. And just to add to the terpene conversation, we won an award for highest level of terpene. I think it was limonene in our Hindu Kush at the Terp Fest. And with the market being so focused on THC, and that like if it doesn't test over 20, stores don't want it. But now there's kind of a little bit of a shift with people wanting to see terpene results on the test, on the label. And I think as customers, as people in general get more educated, that the terpene levels are really, in a lot of cases, I think more important than THC levels. And you don't really get that so much. I mean, strain and growing methods, that all plays into it, no matter what environment you're in. But when it comes down to it, sunshine, it just gives higher levels of terpene. The feel, the high, everything. The sunshine just, coming from so many years of indoor growing, and then really I've got maybe 3-4 years of greenhouse growing under my belt. I love smoking greenhouse weed more so. There's just a different level to it, I think.
I agree. I mean, I know that also some of the things that I learned from your project that other people can probably help with is that, you bought your greenhouse going into wintertime, so you technically didn't need your light deprivation system. And you saved some.
I ran it for the first 6 months. And then when I got enough bread together, I bought the greenhouse light dep system separate and put that in for the summer. So yeah.
I think that's a great way to look at things, because I try to, in some ways help people when they're buying their greenhouses, because budgets are always a concern. And so I always kind of reflect to your story of, applying the money when you needed it. And, there is light pollution plans or processes going into place. So not everybody can do what you did, but you did have kind of a funny story about when you lit up your greenhouse.
One of the neighbors called the fire department. I had the sheriff department, I had the fire department, literally with the bolt cutters ready to cut the chain on the gate. But the fire chief just happened to have kids going to the same school, and we've always been open with wherever our kids have gone to school. Like, hey, look, we grow weed, we're legal, but if our kid smells like it, just know that it's not intentional. But yeah, that saved our ass for sure. And but yeah, I mean, without the cover in the early morning or the the evening, with a bunch of HPS running, it's
Yeah, you
a little
create quite the
concerning for the neighbors.
glowworm.
Yeah. So the light depth curtain is a good thing to have for sure.
And not everybody can do that because of the light pollution plans that are needed in place. But things like heat, if people are setting up their greenhouses and they're going to be running at springtime, you definitely probably won't need the lights and the heating system as much. So you can save a couple bucks there.
Just to comment on that specifically, on some of these dark days in the Northwest winter, raining sideways, gray skies for weeks on end. Rather than running a heater, I'll close that curtain. And it's also known as an energy curtain, so it keeps the warmth in the greenhouse. And with just 15 gavitas running with that cover closed, I don't need a heater. And at night I've got the dehues running, so generally speaking it stays right where it needs to be. You open up that curtain in the same temperature, it might drop down to 60, whereas with the curtain closed and the lights running, I'm right there at like 75, 76 degrees. So there's a lot of advantages and a lot of different things that you can do with the curtain, without the need to just block out light, but just keeping that environment, keeping the temperatures and the humidity and everything dialed.
I just wanted to comment on the idea of light pollution. And just bringing it back to being a responsible farmer, is we really should consider, when we are running lights at night, the type of light pollution that we're creating, and in some counties and some municipalities, it's actually part of regulations that you have to have a blackout system in order to enclose that light, because not only do the curtains keep the light out, but they keep the light in as well. And as you said, Jason, like there's so many more uses you can utilize with that, because a greenhouse itself doesn't necessarily have R value to it, right? But when you utilize that energy curtain, now not only are you cutting down the volume of air that you need to warm or take some of the humidity out of, but you're creating this energy conserving area, right? And so that brings me to the conversation of people that ask a lot, like, should I use a dual poly system with air running through it, or some way to trap the heat in the middle of it, right? And really what we see is, again, you shouldn't really be looking at your greenhouse skin as R value, as your ability to hold in heat. Plus what's happening, is as sunlight's coming through, if you've got, say, an 85% transmissive cover that then has a gap of air and then another 85% transmissive cover, so you've got 85% of the light coming through and then 85% of that light coming through, and now there's a need to start turning on lights because you're not getting the type of lumens that you need. And so it's, it can be a really fighting against the flow on that level. Plus in the summertime, if you have that dual system as well, now you've got an area that's trapping heat, and all you're trying to do is get rid of heat, right? So yeah, the curtains can be used on so many levels.
I tried the double cover on a different system, just a hoop house, and for the winter time, it does trap heat, and it does create a little bit more efficient running, at the expense of needing to run more lights, because now you're down to like 70% versus just 85%. So yeah, there's pluses and minuses for all these different systems for sure.
Do you use a lumen meter at all to judge whether your plants are getting the kind of growth rate that you're looking for in your greenhouses?
I do use a lumen meter, but not necessarily for that in particular. I take what I can get. The lumen meter, though, I would run around and at 0 lumens, there's enough light for humans to see, but not necessarily for plants. So I would use that lumen meter as kind of a a meter for when do I pull my tarps at night, you know, and
that's a good
generally
point
speaking.
too. And they have an app on your phone now called Light
Yep.
Meter. Yeah, so the Light Meter app's pretty handy, and that's when I find out if it's dark or not. And a lot of people wonder or try to say, oh, you got to be there exactly the same time every day. You can't have a pinhole of light leak. You can't. It's just, oh my God, and it's so unforgiving, and your plants are gonna herm and all hell. And it's like, no, you can be late. I skipped 5 days one time, not in a row, but 5 days over the course of a whole round. I had lots of light leaks over time. I made sure the light meter said 0. If it says 0, you're good. I mean, I'm not advocating being lazy and having tons of light leaks and that kind of shit, but I've definitely pushed the limit to really see, you know, where the variances are sometimes. And I mean, I think the plants are pretty dang forgiving, and most of the myths and the things that we are afraid of in cannabis come from indoor technology. And that isn't to slight indoor growing. It's just, when there's a light leak, we don't find it for a week or 3. We don't, you know, it's just, it's a little different. In light depth greenhouses, it gets dark. Mother Nature is on your side.
Yeah, and something that we noticed too is that we never had any herming or anything like that, or even foxtailing, any problems. We always had, like, you know, light leaks and all different kinds of things. You know, we maybe weren't always on time, just the way that the day was going. And then we started putting in like some equatorial land races and some of the old school land races. And then we really started noticing that if there was even a teeny tiny light leak in there, that those ones were really going to go off, and we were having herming like immediately.
Yeah,
So
we had an Acapulco Gold in particular that was just getting towards the end of its flower, and then just totally re-vegged its flower bud and stuff, and it was just a little bit of light that really kind of triggered it to make that happen. It was interesting.
yeah,
though.
we noticed that with all of our landrace strains. So if you are doing genetics, you know, it probably is important. We're really learning about having it totally tight, but most of the time it doesn't really make a difference. You know, you got to be on it, but
no, it does help to have it black.
yeah, oh, for sure.
That brings up a good point that, you know, I've had my own experience, but I'd like to hear everybody else's feedback as to different strains for different cycles in the year. You know, we talk about, you know, 3 cycles in the dep house or 5 cycles. I've had my own experience where I can see a variance in what genetics to use in each cycle. Anybody else like to comment on that?
I would have to say, coming from an indoor grower background, you know, I would never skip a beat. And it's like you pull a room down, you clean it, you stock it right back up. And if you've got a good, you know, 7.5 to 8 week plant, you know, there's really no reason in a, you know, indoor or greenhouse that you shouldn't be able to get 6 crops a year. You know, if you're running something that's you can pull down in 49 days, I mean, you could technically squeeze in 7. So if, you know, if you're on it, there's no lag time, you know, at least.
Damn. So are you saying you officially pull 6 a year right now? Or you've been pulling 6?
Every year. I mean, I look at it. I look at it like this. If you have, you know, if you have 56 days in a cycle, if you're going to pull down, you know, let's say you're pulling down $30,000 every 56 days. Well, 56 days divided by $30,000 is, you know, whatever it is. I can't add, but for every day that you're down and you're not up and running, you know, you could consider that a loss. Whereas if you're really efficient and you really stay on your cycle, I mean, there's no reason to not get 6. And when we're all looking at, you know, all these new regulations and taxes and everything, we have to be smart with our money. We have to be smart with our time. We have to be efficient. Otherwise, we're going to get kicked out of the game.
And Jonathan, to answer your question, you know, I absolutely feel like genetics is paramount to running, you know, multiple cycles, you know, really looking into what works in a colder weather system, what works better in a damper cycle, because with greenhouses and you're lowering your costs, you know, and you're not putting up all those fans and everything, you really can work with your genetics during the seasonal times.
And, you know, the model of getting as many out of a season, I totally understand it, and it makes all the sense in the world. And there are some formats that you can use to just take some time off, you know, and get like really good seasons, you know, throughout the year, and then, you know, utilize your crew and rejuvenate yourself a little bit like that. But I mean, I'm not saying
And
that,
I think that
we're not at all saying that as a thing, to, you know, to what you said. But
yeah,
you know,
I think Josh is saying that though is because we have gone in and
Overproduction
done
here
some
in Oregon and
consulting
stuff.
with a lot of farms, and we have really run those numbers, and people are really trying to push, you know, the 5 cycles. And then when you start running the numbers and the outtake and the heat, or maybe the air conditioning that it takes to run those, it's almost better. Well, it is. It actually has been better for some of them to take off one of those cycles, because they've just realized that their output is a lot more than what they're getting out of it.
And one other factor in like different, in like in the state of Oregon, is just there's a huge production. So just utilizing your time, you know, in a way that makes sense is a big thing. But I'd also be interested to hear what people are doing for their soils, if they're testing their soils or doing ways of finding their soils to keep their plants efficient and their greenhouses efficient in their grows.
Anyone soil test?
We soil test.
I soil test too. Go ahead, I'll go after you.
Thanks. Yes, we soil test. It's probably one of the best things we could have done for our farm. We worked the soil 2 years, and we used dirty business soil located in Arcata, California. Woo-hoo! And it just, the knowledge that came from us being on an alluvial floodplain was incredible. The ground is perfect. And so when I hear you guys talking about, oh, the bags or whatever, I think it's sufficient to plant into the ground. So Micah's not back yet, so I guess I still have the stage. But while I'm here, if anyone would like to do a video with the Grow Sisters, we want to hang out with you guys more. I don't know how long the church goes today, but there's definitely topics that I've been writing down, and I would love to pick your brains later.
Yeah, I'm sure most people are available one form or another. And yeah, I mean, I definitely would love to say hello when I come up north on my next visit.
I have a spare bedroom. I know that sounds weird, but just go in there.
Well, lots of people up in Humboldt have guest quarters because it's not the type of area you go to back in the day, and just, you know, hotels weren't always easily accessible unless you were in Arcata.
Sam had another thing he wanted to share about talking about lumens.
Basically, what we found is that absolutely you need lots of lumens to produce biomass in vegetation. Is flowered halfway or more, and pretty much all it's going to do then is fill out the flowers and maybe add a lot of weight from resin and stuff. I found lower light levels, I'm talking about from the sun or from artificial lights, actually produce superior product. Also, what I found is that the high temperatures associated with flowering, really high temperatures, it's not really positive because it has a tendency to vaporize terpenes right on the plant. So lower temperatures, a little bit lower lumens, I found produce superior product. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons that we spend a lot of time trying to lower plant temperatures, because lowering the air temperature is a lot harder to do. And so our work has been, you know, in a 100-degree day trying to get plant temperatures down into the high 80s if possible. And it works, and the soil temps stay down too. And so, you know, part of that is what we're seeing with the higher terpene production coming up, because a lot of these places, like I said, are really high in the air temperature. But luckily for us, plants are like people. We sweat, plants sweat. So put me in front of a fan, I'm going to cool down and not sweat. Put a fan in front of a plant, and it's going to avoid it from sweating, and even start to cool it down because it's evaporative itself. And so that's where I see a lot of the terpene and even higher THC productions is, softer light, like Sam is saying, cooler, especially leaf surface temperature over time. And what we saw at the soil class, or the regenerative class I did up or seminar with Dragonfly up in Portland last week, was a guy that during one of the discussions talked about THC, because a lot of people in certain books and things have written about higher THCs, higher associated with higher UV. And what we see is that greenhouse covers in general, and even with glass glass being a cover, UVs can be blocked. And that's why people end up getting a lot of PM in their greenhouses versus outdoor plants. Outdoor plants won't get PM as easy, but greenhouse does. And that has a lot to do with the UVB. And so if people try to associate higher THC with UV, I'm starting to see that that's not necessarily true. And what brings it up also in that class or the seminar was a guy was doing testing with LED lights, and there was an LED light, he said, that put off a higher UVB, and so it encouraged a higher leaf surface temperature, and they actually lost 2% THC through testing the lights and having those UVBs tell them that. So it kind of associates a lot with the sun and how we can soften the light to encourage higher THC and terpene profiles in these plants, and it can be done. And going back to what Jonathan was saying about picking the right genetics, and I don't know if this has to do with, shitty clones over the course of time, because I was in some massive greenhouses down in Southern California, and there was an acre or two that had just tons of different varieties. And when you walk through the greenhouse, you can clearly see that certain varieties did really well versus the other varieties. And so it was clear for me, is like, why grow these if you can just grow those? And, it solves the problem for that area. But then again, maybe they had shitty moms and the clones were shitty, but it really looked like it had a lot to do with the selective cultivars that they were trying to deal with at that time in that particular area. Because again, people are getting existing greenhouses now, and so they might not have all the options that we talk about. And so how can we work with existing systems to make them work smarter, not harder?
And also, I was thinking that it's really important for people to have a small area of their farm or their greenhouse for research and development. Running numbers and looking at how we need to save money, running a little area of research and development for genetics is really becoming absolutely imperative. What works in your area and what doesn't.
I totally agree with that, and shout out to Bogside Botanicals in Maine. They've been running a few greenhouses of ours, and they do what they called snow depths on their hashtags. And I know they've done a lot of research with small hoops and even garage tents and things that we'd heard earlier from some panelists. And so, you can do a lot in a short amount of time if you just do a little bit of testing and then quantify that you can do it and then make the leap. And so, like I said before, a lot of the greenhouses and the things that we see are pretty cookie cutter from state to state, coast to coast. It's just having that flexibility to be able to open or close these greenhouses to, turn them on or off, basically, for a lack of better words, and support cannabis, not fight Mother Nature to support cannabis, but truly support it in all ways possible. And if we do got to fight Mother Nature because there's no sun and it's dark and it's freezing cold outside, obviously we want to add heat, but, we want to be practical in all these aspects of how we apply these systems.
And are you seeing people using shade cloths in the heat of the day, and like for 2 hours, say, or something like that?
I do, and in some cases I see people using them in inconsistent ways, or maybe not totally in the correct manner. There is a point of no return. You can pull a shade cloth where it's too late, and you're actually going to be retaining energy rather than helping cool the leaf surfaces and things like that. I've been working with a lot of the shade screen, or now they call them climate screens now. Because originally they were shade screens, and so the companies we work with create a climate screen that can be used in various capacities and different, there's a whole book of samples that I have. And so depending on where you are and what you're doing, we can select the proper energy / shade curtain. But, again, the grower has to use all these things at the right time and appropriately, so that these things work smarter for you, not harder, basically. And that's kind of the name of the game. You can easily take the word green right out of greenhouse.
I was wondering if anyone wanted to talk about like pests in the greenhouse and stuff, because we've utilized our greenhouse to get rid of pests. And has anyone else use that, and what do they do for that? Because I think that's a really big issue in growing these days, is how to have a greenhouse or how to go long term with pests.
And pest and fungal management, so
yeah.
Both of them.
Yeah, JD, why don't we hear from you a little bit? What do you have to deal with since you enter all these events and all this scrutinized testing that you've gone through in California? Do you spray and deal battle pests and things?
We spray when we need to, kind of as a last resort. I've used heat a lot. I'll turn off the vents and on the sealed greenhouse, and I could run the heat up really hot. And if I run it up over maybe like 110, 115 degrees, it seems like it'll like start eliminating a lot of the pathogens, you know, like I'll get rid of a lot of pests. We here, you know, in this area, it'll be 110 degrees outside for 3 or 4 days running. And so if you use 4 or 5 hours a day and let it spike up into the 120, I mean, we've had it seems to purge everything. I've heard of like a lot of commercial nurseries doing that too. It's just like with some of their indoor plants, it's like a lot easier and more efficient than spraying. So that's one of the things that the greenhouse will help with.
What do you spray with?
I like to spray with compost tea, like doing foliar teas, you know, and building up that like natural barrier on the plants, so that they have the immunity to fight it off. The idea is to not have to get into a battle with anything, but just to try to keep it in balance as much as possible.
I also heating up the greenhouse. I agree with you. It's awesome. We're really finding we're doing a tremendous amount of research right now on pathogens of both fungal and also pest. And we're finding that 120 degrees at leaf temperature, not just 120 degrees and what is like going on in the outside, you know, really having a temperature gauge is absolutely imperative. Being inside of the greenhouses when you're raising it to 120, and also absolutely giving them, just like when you go into the sauna, you bring all of your teas and your waters with you. You really have to drench those soils and get a really beautiful tea on there that's easy to uptake, maybe some nice natural plant electrolytes, and get it up to 120 degrees. And we're noticing that pathogens die at 120 degrees, and a lot of the beneficials will thrive, and the plant thrives at 120 degrees. And we are just so thankful, you know, maybe over the last 10 years, realizing about pest and fungal management.
The leaves really going up and stuff, and then we hit a threshold where they started to peel a little bit, like get a little bit too hot, so we opened the sides, but you have to be really careful with opening in the sides when you do a heat treatment, because if a wind hits it or a direct sun, it can almost like burn the leaves.
It makes the leaf temperature just that higher.
When you heat your greenhouse up, you really have to kind of open it slow and just let the plant just kind of reacclimate and rebreathe and stuff. But I just want to say aphids are a new pest that are becoming a really big deal, and they're kind of different, and they went away after many hours of super hot heat.
Nice.
I wonder if the ants got them.
Epic.
You guys ever see the ants bring the aphids onto your plants so they could milk them for their little sugar juices?
What else brings them?
Yeah, definitely. It's really interesting. You know, if you look at, you know, I've gone into the brain of the aphid this last year. I've really taken a lot of time to learn about aphids and what they do and what is happening now on the planet. And if you really look at an aphid, it's an amazing macro food for almost every single other species.
It's a scrumptious little body.
It is so scrumptious. It has delicious little sugars and carbohydrates in there, you know, and I even ate one. I was like, okay, you know, I'm really going to do this. They're delicious. They taste just like cannabis juice. So we're realizing that
there's a homeopathic dose, don't worry.
We don't know what's there, but we're going to find out. But they're really delicious. So they really make an amazing food for other animals and other life forms, and maybe they're coming about for that reason.
Yellow jackets eat them and stuff. So yeah, you know, it's important. Broad mites, you know, we just want to really encourage predator mites from the nursery all the way through, because, you know, sprays are harder and harder to use, even compost sprays.
And 120 degrees definitely will kill your predators as well. Your predator mites will not kill ladybugs. They love it. Other, you know, hard exoskeleton creatures have no problem with that much of a heat, but the small mites definitely die.
That's interesting about ice. Is there something to say about that?
I was just commenting that using ice water sprays on the plants will, you know, because you'll notice mites and russets and broad mites and all that stuff as they take off. They really thrive at those higher temperatures. So especially with outdoor growing and, you know, even in people's greenhouses, you'll see that just start to spread. But ice water will slow the cycle down for like 2 or 3, you know, instead of it being like a duplication every like 3 days, or you can stretch that out to like 4 or 5 and really slow down their duplication to give you time to get back on top of it.
Bubble Man, I had a question for you. It started out just kind of as a joke right here on the side, but have you ever worked with the water from your bubble hash and sprayed with that on your plants, or have you used that to water into your plants, and have you seen anything from that?
He may have just actually left.
Oh, shoots.
I can see. So that would be interesting. I mean, I wonder if Skunkman Sam had anything to say about that too, but
we use our ice water hash for every single feeding. You know, we actually are realizing that we're making hash more for the nutrients of our plants and to get like the leftover material into our soil than even the hash. I mean, the hash is now a secondary product for us.
We're putting together our nursery soil right now, so we want to spin some hash up so that we can utilize the leaf in our soil mix. And then we have a 150-gallon tank that has a hose coming out of it, so all the water comes out of the machine, goes into a 150-gallon tank, and then we gravity feed all that water into our different greenhouses. So we just accumulate the terpene water in our beds.
And I love that. It's a great idea. Of course, if you're making ice water hash, it's not so great to do ice water hash necessarily in the middle of summer. But if you are spinning something inside and you can spray it, russet mites definitely do not like that cold water. So I love that idea, Jonathan.
Mm-hmm.
Just as another sort of thought with greenhouses and pest control, just keeping things kind of cold in the winter. You know, if there's any sort of issues or you see anything, you know, just turning the heater off and letting things kind of get a little bit colder than normal. Yeah, at least in veg, I'm talking about more so. But and then it just gives you kind of a chance to get really on top of things, and bugs just don't multiply as readily when it's a little bit chillier, you know.
It's another reason that we like promote the radiant heating, because when you heat the soil and heat the roots and heat the plant itself, the air temp can stay kind of lower, and you experience that with your geothermal. Your Prohibition vault is actually your geothermal heating system for your greenhouse inadvertently, and you're able to keep those air temps down. So I mean, that's really a benefit in the winter time too. So I mean, yeah, using the environment to do things to mitigate bugs is definitely a good way to make the green in the greenhouse.
Yo, Bubble Man, you dropped off for a second there, but I wanted to ask you, have you utilized the spent water from making bubble with all of the terps and all of the everything that's inside of that to use as an effective foliar or drench?
We definitely played around in the early days, but never really noticed anything. You know, my experiments were more hash focused than grow focused. And I always seem to be lucky, you know, shout out to Ron Hickey, my grow mentor from back in the day, who just always made it seem like a simple thing to produce full melt resin. So I never grew on a huge scale. You know, 20 lights was about where I maxed out. And I mostly really did indoor with a little bit of outdoor sort of on my deck and whatnot. Still do have the dream of getting the forever flowering greenhouse behind my house. That'll be 2018 or 2019 for certain. But not too much experiments other than, you know, a little bit of a foliar feed and putting it right back into the plants. And it definitely didn't seem to do negative, that's for sure.
What are you guys smoking on over there in Jamaica?
I'm hitting some pure artesian rosin from Quebec. Little Quebec rosin, eh? Le Français, le mec. And of course, we're hitting some local Jamaican flavors as well. Rosin, I've always come and made bubble hash over the years, but rosin's just such a quick and easy thing, especially when you have the Sasquatch rosin press here in Jamaica. We can just crush out a half pound in no time and make some nice resin. So we have some, you know, the pineapple skunk or whatever they call it, the classic everything skunk in Jamaica.
That's so awesome. What are you smoking on, Dragonfly?
We have this homesteader strain that we've crossed our Temple Spice with our Zelly's Gift, and it's just got this really beautiful flavor to it that has some of the Jack Herrera, super lemon haze
Some
notes in
afgoo,
it.
some of that original afgoo.
Goo and
It comes
stuff.
from a father of our who knows how many years, many years that we've been working with a particular strain. And we've got this one that we're calling the Homesteader because it's so sweet.
And because we used our hash water on it, that's on our homestead. But you know, I just want to say one thing is just so when we do use our hash water, that water, it doesn't really last very long. And also the leaf doesn't last very long when it gets spun up, because I don't know if spinned is a word, but spun up. It tends to have a little bit of you know, the ability to break down quick. So, you know, we put it right into our soil. In fact, our son and our family's up at home right now doing that right now. Shout out to the crew.
Thanks, guys, for running that.
Yeah, so we're putting it right into the soil so that it doesn't create a breakdown and it doesn't get anaerobic, because the water on the leaf, you know, can create an anaerobic thing. We'll make bokashi in it by adding dry material to it to make sure that it doesn't get too wet and stuff. So anyway, utilizing it fresh is key, and the water, you know, just accumulates in the soil nicely. But anyway,
that's cool.
Yeah.
What are you smoking on, Farmer Tom? What's your go-to in the day, throughout the day?
Muted. You're muted.
Who, I muted?
No, it's Tom is not able to talk.
Oh, there,
right, so.
there we go.
Okay.
So I'm smoking Black Wreck, which is Black Durban mixed with Trainwreck and mixed with some Amnesia Haze. So that's what we're liking here.
That sounds good. Right on. What about you, Siobhan? What are you smoking on over there in Humboldt?
Blessed Coast OG. Simply OG.
Okay. That sounds good. What about you, JD?
Let's see. Well, the one I rolled up for the show, I've got a lemon banana sherbet. It just came out of our winter round. It came out really nice. Super sweet and creamy. Good thing for I can still stay focused on the show, not get too blasted.
That sounds good. Since you're in the area, when I was at the Golden Tarp, I was lucky enough to do some judging and whatnot. And I mean, I was able to know which flower was yours once they announced the winners, because they let us know the number. But it was definitely, I think, a landslide at the judges area. It was a clear, like, it was pretty easy to choose your flower over some of the rest. I think a lot of people in those light dip competitions, unfortunately, enter a lot of premature herb, is what I saw. I saw a lot more premature weed than I normally am used to seeing. But Jason, what are you smoking on over there?
My favorite is this cherry pie got going, but just a couple of cuts I got from some friends. Just nice. Stunky, beautiful, love it.
That's killer. What about you, Jonathan? You smoking on anything over there?
Super silver haze all the time. You know me.
You don't have any LSD going on over there? Because that was good for a while.
What about Micah? What do you got in Colorado there?
That is the strain, of course. You know.
Right, the strain LSD, Jonathan. Come on, man. Get your mind.
What were you guys thinking?
about pens?
What?
You're on pens in Colorado? What flav? Is that a leaf flav?
Yeah, it is. It's a CBD strain that we did, Valentine X. And this is what I managed to get in my bag before we took off. So
that's killer. That makes the slopes much nicer. Right on. Well,
I'd like to bring it back to greenhouse cultivation, if I can, for a second. I got a couple questions I'd like to just throw out to the group. You know, because I think a lot of methodologies of cultivation are changing right now because of the removal of the plant count. right? Because that ruled so much of what people were doing for so long, and people didn't want to get above 99 plants on their property. But now that we remove that, a lot of people are going with smaller plants and higher plant counts. So, when we talk about efficiency, and of course, there's so many ways to look at it, really. A lot of people are just focused on efficiency, which have a lot of, it's very practical in the regulated market. And, Sam was talking about growing big plants more for, genetics and breeding and such. And so what I'm seeing too is a big movement into rolling benches, so that you can really utilize your footprint and have as much of your space being grown with as little amount of walkways going on. And so some people are going with really small plants, like 5 to 7 gallon plants, and then just able to just grow really short plants that are about 18 inches, 2 feet tops, at the end, with a whole lot less labor that goes into it, a whole lot less amount of time for, again, any molds, mildews, pests, or diseases to move in. And so, wondering what everybody here on the call is having success with, in the sense of, are you moving to higher plant counts, smaller plants? Are you growing larger plants inside of a greenhouse, and going in that direction, and maybe vegging them somewhere else and getting them in? What's your guys' experience out there?
We're definitely doing higher plant counts than we were in the past, for sure. Now that we don't really have to worry about the quote unquote 99 rule, for a handful of different reasons. I think that, especially with their full term stuff, so we do, we've got some gardens off to the sides of the greenhouses, and, tending to a 16-foot tall outdoor plant is super labor intensive. And so we're trying to keep everything that's just same height as us. It's a lot easier. We do more plants than nice. Let's watch you hit that thing. We do more plants in the garden than we did in the past, and it's mainly for 2 different reasons. The one thing being that it's easier when it comes to labor, I think, and then the other is just, I personally feel that younger plants, when you have these big, gigantic, tall plants, we kind of see that we run into more problems with molds and stuff at the end of the year than we do with smaller plants that aren't so thick and in the bud setting. So that's the main thing. And then in our depots, we definitely doing sea of green. We're doing beds in all of our depots, even in our forever flowering greenhouses. It's just the way it's my personal. I don't like moving a bunch of pots around and pulling soil in and out of that greenhouse all the time. That might change as we expand. If we do one of these big greenhouse facilities, I might, change my thinking on that. But we'll see. Yeah. So more plants and smaller plants is definitely what we're doing.
Micah, it's cool. You just touched on something that's interesting. I was talking about earlier R&D, and bigger plants do have more susceptibility. We're definitely noticing that. It is really awesome to grow them out, because they are these beautiful, amazing, sentient beings, and who doesn't love to grow big plants?
And we have a greenhouse just for those tall ones.
Yeah, and we use that for our research and development. So what grows well around our areas, we're going to grow those plants all the way out and over, and we're going to find out how they're doing in the environment to really work with what plants we're going to run for the next year, what we're going to seed out. So picking our genetics. And
there is different expressions that come from the bigger plants. So I think that, for us, we'll always keep a greenhouse, for the big plants and stuff. I know that different regulations make people grow differently. In California, it makes sense to have 20 pounds at a time, for testing and everything. And when it comes to testing, that's a cost and everything. So sometimes that's why clones are doing batches of different, smaller plants and big batches can make a lot of sense for testing and stuff like that.
And what we're also doing now is we're actually swapping out our greenhouses. So one half of the greenhouse is for these huge, large plants that we're utilizing research and development in one area. And then we're doing, 2 different cycles in the other side of the greenhouse in a sea of green. So that's been really fun to sort of swap it around.
Going back to pest, having the smaller plants, we were able to handle them more and keep them cleaner and move through them quicker. And so the depth worked. Anyway.
I think that has a lot to do with the plants just being in a more vigorous state, you know, and especially if you're in beds, you know, and if you have pots, you know, if your plants have been in pots for a long time and their roots are bound, you know, they're going to be more susceptible towards pests, and there's a lot of soil tests that can prove that.
And
so,
bigger people need more calories. It's no different for plants, you know. When you have larger people, larger plants, they need more calories. They're definitely going to be uptaking so much more from your soil as well. So it's really good
Sam?
to rate out, are your plants producing more flowers in the end, or is the sea of green producing more flowers in the end?
And the smaller plants, usually those roots are in a more vigorous growth state as they're growing, so their flowers are more healthy in that way.
Sam just had mentioned something off camera here when we were on mute that, well, do you want to mention it, Sam?
What was it? I forget.
It was about the size of the resin glands versus the size of the plants.
I just wanted to mention that when I grew the identical clone, big, small, even in vitro, so that the flowered off plant was only maybe an inch or two tall when it was completely flowered in agar in vitro in a test tube, the resin is much smaller. The individual resin heads on that plant. When you grow it 2-3 feet tall, like you're talking about for sea of green or something, the resin is quite a bit bigger. But when I grew my same clone and it was 12 feet tall, the resin was again a little bit. That's important.
It's important to me.
We missed that last little part, but.
Well, the last little part was that if your plant is 12 feet tall and you flower it off and then you collect the resin from that, it's again a little bit bigger than the 3-foot plant. Each individual resin head is a little bit bigger. And for hash makers, that's important.
And that's where we, you know, don't want to outsmart ourselves, you know, and having a place for the bigger plants and the bigger expression. Really, they're you know, depending on what you're growing the plants for, it can make a lot of sense. So.
And if you are going to bring in one particular strain from, you know, somebody that's selling clones or something, we do really suggest to grow it out really big. If it's going to be something that you're going to run and you're going to do a whole lot of, or a whole greenhouse of, or several greenhouses of, it's good to see its full expression all the way through to see what kind of pests or what kind of fungi that it gets.
This is interesting listening to it, all the different perspectives, especially the resin head size. I've done rooms with 24 plants. I've done rooms with 240 plants, and you know, yield wise, you know, it can be very similar. The only difference being the time that you've got to spend in veg. And you know, if you're spending different, or if you're vegging in a different area, you know, it doesn't necessarily affect the flowering area, but it's, you know, the regulations, the plant numbers going away. I mean, up here in Washington, they said we could, you know, we could grow 45 plants, but they never said how big they could be. So, you know, I always did really big plants and, you know, filled 1,000 square feet or 200 square feet with that same number. But I like growing big plants. And up here in Washington, it's not the best, but, you know, in a light depth, it works. But, you know, the same results can be achieved, you know, with different number of plants, different sizes, but the whole resin head size, that is interesting. That's a cool thing to think about for sure.
Yeah, that was a good one. And, you know, I mean, one of the things that we kind of went by to create a metric that Jonathan, you know, we kind of came up with, I think, through collectively responses from the people we worked with, basically, was that in 1,000 square feet, we would say is the minimum average harvest should be 50 pounds. And so, you know, we have people up north that are exceeding that number, and then we have most people actually under that number. I mean, I know in Colorado there's a couple facilities that are supposedly pretty good that are running at 38 pounds per 1,000 square feet. And so, originally people went by, how many pounds per light, things like that. And I know grams per square foot is kind of a popular way, I think, now in the indoor category. But, like the greenhouse on our property here, it's kind of back there, but it's a 24 by 60 and it's 1,440 square feet. So we say the minimum average harvest out of that would be 75 pounds per harvest. And then, we've seen up to 110, but it all does come down to variety. And now with this plant count and going into rolling benches and smaller plants and things like that, I'm kind of anxious to see where these numbers are going to go, if they kind of stay the same, if they increase or what. But, we're still trying to do some fact finding on that.
I got another question to throw out to people, because this is something, beautiful bud up there in BC. You guys are giving love to the beasters, you're redeeming yourselves, I think all BC should give love to Kelly and Josh, because they're redeeming the beasters up there.
Thank you. We'll take that. Thank you so much.
There's a lot of good family up in British Columbia doing some good strains.
And
good.
I will say this about the beasters. The beasters came in not far after the community of Vietnamese people started growing cannabis, but it actually came in a little bit before.
We lost,
commercially really good. But the real problem in the beginning from BC was the integrity of the buyer. The integrity of the buyer is he who was.
I really wish we could listen to him.
Marcus.
We probably know what he'll say, which is the integrity of the buyer really affected the grower. So as people moved indoors, the only strain that they could grow was the strain that the buyer was going to buy from them, and there was no room for creativity, and there was no room for anything else.
Which was organized crime at that time. So that was the reason why the beasters started to become, gave a name for itself, was really because, then the consumers didn't even really realize what a real flower looked like outside of what the buyer was buying. So we
were getting a lot of BC coming down that had been sprayed with formaldehyde so that they could ship it wetter, and when you asked why it wasn't cured or dried, the response that I would get would be because you get more weight when it's wet. And so
we weren't bringing down any of that. That wasn't us.
And then there would be the thing of everyone eating it before they down and there was a lot of that. So you were getting formaldehyde weed from the north, and then paraquat weed up from Mexico from the south.
And give thanks for the NorCal Hills, because they saved the day and came in. All the Emerald Triangle and up in the Sierras came in and saved us at that point.
Well, the islands of British Columbia and out in the Kootenays have some really, really crucial families. So we'll give thanks to them.
Absolutely. No, enough love to all the ganja farmers out there for sure. I'll have a question though about CO2, because it's getting mentioned a lot. It's being brought up a lot right now and getting introduced to greenhouses. And my biggest concern about in CO2 injection into greenhouses is how much of it's getting utilized by the plants and how much is just being blown into the environment. And I just want to throw that one out into the group again as well.
Thought you were going to talk about CO2 oil or something for a second.
I did too, but
CO2 injection into the air.
I'm seeing a lot of people messing with that now, and it seems like you got to apply it just at the right time. And have the right tools to measure that, to quantify, I guess you could say. But that's a nice hot new topic. Basically, is running and I've seen a couple different systems out there that people are pushing. But we've always thought nature was enough, but I guess maybe if they want more.
Yeah, I've seen that too lately. A bunch of friends that are talking about, and I don't even know what the product is, but they're talking about how they've got this CO2 product that where the gas will actually stay in the greenhouse, even though the greenhouse is vented, which makes, I don't know, to me it makes no sense whatsoever, but they're claiming that that's what they're doing. And it's for the greenhouse grower and the person trying to reduce, energy costs and all these different things. it seems counterintuitive to me. The plant does just fine with you know, what nature provides, and when I hear guys wanting to do that, and some of the guys that I see building out these greenhouse facilities right now, it's like they're trying to build their greenhouse like an indoor room, and they want CO2 injectors and huge HVAC systems, and to me it's the opposite direction of which way you should be going if you are, you know, going to be doing greenhouse farming.
The cost of production definitely went up.
We've gone one step further as far as nature is concerned, and we're planting a lot of King Stropharia. And as we all know, you know, mushrooms breathe in oxygen and breathe out CO2. And when you have, you know, forever beds that you're adding a tremendous amount of, you know, compost to, or different type of leaf material to, it's really imperative to have that quick breaker downer, you know, the composter, which is the King Stropharia. So you get 3 different things out of it. It breaks down your soil, it lets off CO2, and it's delicious to eat. So,
and it's a cold CO2, so it's not the kind of CO2 that goes up into the atmosphere. It's the kind of CO2 that stays more, you know, at ground level. You can also,
and it will even stay right around the soil beds.
It's also really smart to do log culture, you know, underneath your ganja, and you can be like a mulch layer. You can just do a bunch of round logs right next to each other right at the base, and then they'll grow medicinal mushrooms and exhale CO2. So I think if you're in a greenhouse, you know, you're in nature, and I think you should just enhance nature. And I think if you're using a greenhouse to, you know, be an outdoor grow room, then it can happen.
Utilizing secondary products is so
takes
important.
A lot of energy.
You know, we're all just pushing a lot of cannabis, but to mix cannabis with different medicinal mushrooms is absolutely key. These beautiful 2 adaptogens coming together. You can have so many different types of secondary products that you can, you know, be growing and getting out to market, or even getting to your dispensaries. And mushrooms is one of them.
We like mushrooms.
How do you spell that? That's super interesting. I wanna check that out.
Well,
I want to chime in.
Yeah. It's a King Stropharia mushroom. We'll hit you up for sure.
I want to chime in about regional growing. Bubble Man touched on it when we first started talking, and it's really important because I came from San Diego. I'm originally a landscaper, so I've been planting things since I was 12 years old, and each region's so much different in a growing climate. And like in San Diego, we grew under shade cloth, and thus I became a shade cloth fan. Up here in Washington, I still use a light shade cloth through the whole season. It benefits me with the passive airflow that we get. We get a really nice breeze that starts at 3 o'clock and stops at 11 o'clock. It comes off the mouth of the Columbia, and we're in this little sweet zone where it just blows through this nice cool air. And it really makes for a really good growing thing. But it took years to, develop the style and get used to your place and what works best, in that environment. We like to use shade cloth. We've been using shade cloth pretty much not the whole season. Around September, we'll pull it off so it gets some extra light. I travel a lot, so I can't really light depth too much. So we just, as soon as the first sign of any problems, that's when we pull. Really, nothing, goes fully full term on our farm. Anyways, and Sexco, we're huge fans of trap plants. So we have continuous rounds of green beans, and we also have continuous rounds of eggplant, because what we find is the bugs will go to the trap plants before they'll go up into the plants. And I think just getting known in your region, we're in the Willamette Valley here in Vancouver, Washington, the Portland area. So we're kind of like the north end of the Willamette Valley. And we have a really great greenhouse growing environment here. And those are some of the things that, I've learned over the years. And there you go.
Yeah, that's useful. I think that cover crops can even become a trap on accident, for pests. And if people leave their cover crops too long, or if they have a pest outbreak, maybe, it can go on to the cover crops. So just having biodiversity, we think of having biodiversity, and that's a big part of our pure certification and the farms that we work with. and people can look up, the farms that we work with. And we have a new website called dempurefarms.com. We'll just say that now because it's brand new in the last couple of days, and it's going to highlight the farms that are doing interesting work
and tremendous amounts of educational practices. And we really encourage, just going back to what everybody's saying, education.
Yeah. It's really important to us. So, but yeah, just having diversity around your greenhouse, even if it's flowers around your greenhouse, maybe it's sunflowers, maybe it's marigolds, maybe it's geraniums, because geraniums never get bugs on them. It's a whole bunch of things that, make it important, and it's things that we don't even know about because we're just enhancing nature by having diversity around.
And another thing to add is that we're realizing, different types of terpenes. If you've had a really horrible outbreak of mites and you've had many years of it, there's the geranol, limonene, it's another one, and linalool. Those are terpenes that really, pests do not like to be around at all. So really trying to find varieties that contain those high terpene levels will be also really helpful.
And I'd like to also just remind people this time of the year, in the winter time, if you are growing in the winter time, to maintain higher soil temps. I've seen a couple people noticing that their plants aren't where they should be right now as far as like flower production, and some people try to discuss, maybe it's the UV, maybe it's the temperature, maybe it's, the air temperature and some of these other factors. And 9 times out of 10, a 6-inch soil probe going into your soil will tell you how cold or warm your soil is. And, the soil, when you're in grow bags, I like to call growing in 30-gallon or bigger grow bags NorCal style, because when there was plant counts, everybody wanted to grow the biggest plant they possibly could, but they wanted to do light dep. And so the 30 to 45-gallon grow bag got pretty popular. And when you put that type of a grow bag on the earth, or even a grow bed for that matter, the temperature of the soil will fluctuate with the weather even. So when it's warm temperatures like this, our soil temps obviously go up. And when it's rainy, they go down. And when we have the cold snaps, they go down tremendously. And so we've seen that, or you guys, soil people, have taught us that anything below 55 degrees, we don't have nutrient exchange and good mobility for life. And so what I find in the wintertime is most soil temperatures are under 55 degrees, whether they're in a container or a bed. And so if you don't have soil temperatures above 55 degrees, you're going to have trouble getting the same production or quality of flower that you would normally get in the spring or the summertime. And so, a 6-inch soil probe is really easy to get on Amazon and have it sent to you. I also get the infrared thermometer, so you can point and shoot the surface temps to find out in the summertime how hot the surface of the plant is, how hot the ground is, a bunch of different things, so you can really kind of get in tune. Because again, that temp and humidity thermostat that we normally would go to in a grow room or even a greenhouse controller doesn't really tell us everything. And so I have some people that I'm working with that do have, they're doing really a great job. But one of the things that we were kind of noticing is, or they mentioned to me about the wintertime growing and some soil temps dipping. They have a radiant heating system. The soil temps are up to the 70s, but then watering with 55-degree well water will shock the roots and actually cause your system to have to regenerate and heat back up again. And so, it's kind of a minute thing, when you think about it, or just when you're speaking about it, I guess you say. But when you really think about it and what you're doing, it can make quite a difference. And so, that's why I really try to differentiate the difference between winter mode greenhouses and summer mode greenhouses. Greenhouses were invented and designed for wintertime, and when you try to use them in the summer, they can be difficult, but they'll do really well in the wintertime. So, something to keep in mind is that you can really change the winter mode greenhouse to a summer mode, whether you're in a hoop, mid-tech, or a high-tech greenhouse. And it just takes some thinking and understanding and looking at the greenhouse to decide which is the best method to go about doing that. But again, greenhouses were invented for wintertime, and most greenhouse companies are selling you a greenhouse that is going to do what it's supposed to do, work well in the wintertime. And so when we talk, hey, we're going to be out in the hot summer sun, it might be the easy default to say you need a wet wall cooling system, and a wet wall is an evaporative cooler. So it's basically based on water trickling over a pad, and then the exhaust fans at the opposite end of the greenhouse exchanging the air. And hopefully that air can be cooled passing through the greenhouse. But if you're in a humid area, it's not going to work that way. So here in the gold country or the foothills where we are, they can work at times, but they're not 365, 24/7. And when you get into humid places like the Emerald Triangle, and I'm not talking terribly humid, but over 47% relative humidity, you're not going to see much reduction in temperature. And that's why we really try to talk about cooling surfaces rather than cooling the air to do that, because most greenhouse companies are going to try to sell you a winter mode greenhouse as designed, and then the default is that evaporative cooler, and that's just not going to work for everybody everywhere. And so again, if you understand the cannabis plant too, you can really work well with a greenhouse in the summertime, knowing how cannabis wants to sweat and as easily to keep cool without a cooling system, doing all these things in the right manners, and then paying attention to that soil biology. I mean, I think the show goes till about 12, and some of the last things that I would, wrap up with is that don't always pay attention to the environment. We in the cannabis community and industry chase the environment so much that a lot of people forget what's going on underground. And it's easy to overwater. It's easy to let your soils get cold. It's easy to let things slide sometimes. And the biology is an important part of the system. And so if you want control in your greenhouse, make sure you understand what's going on underground as well, because the environment's only half the battle, in my opinion.
Totally agree. I also think that everyone should have a microscope and get closer to their leaves than just the real little handheld ones that are common for spider mites. I think it takes a microscope or getting in there 60, or even 100 times. And even having one that goes to your computer screen that has a video on it that you can take a log of your pictures or videos. Even you can take a compost tea or tea and look at it under a microscope as well. I think that's really important to add to what you said, Eric. So yeah, and testing your soil after every run, and testing your soil after every run makes a lot of sense, and we really recommend that.
Yeah, testing everything is important. I mean, the inputs these days, you never know where you're getting it from. I mean, you might know where you're getting it from, but how long has it been in the bag? How long has it been, sitting around or through these processes? And so we really want to make sure we're testing all our ingredients, making sure that everything that we're using is going to work, because according to Nevada, and it looks like maybe California, it'll be pretty easy to fail a test if you don't follow a lot of the proper guidelines and keeping things clean. The Department of Pesticide Regulation released the allowable stuff for cannabis, and there isn't much allowed as far as pesticides and fungicides and herbicides that people would want to use and maybe even find to be organic in some cases, but it's not going to be okay for cannabis. And a lot of people try to, compare cannabis to other vegetables in farming. And I always try to say that, you can't take a flower and go wipe it on your shirt like you would an apple before you eat it. You can't wash it off. You don't, blanch it or pasteurize it or any of these other things that you do with food before it gets to people. A lot of people don't realize what their food goes through before it reaches the shelves as far as being sanitized, and so cannabis can go through some of the same things, but UV light, I think there's some weird microwave things out there these days but I mean, at the end of the day, we can't always compare what happens in regular ag to cannabis, and I see that happening a lot these days. But making sure you know what you're using and making sure that your soil is healthy so that you can grow clean, healthy plants, and the environment that you grow in is conducive to that. But I mean, as we start to wrap up here closer to 12 o'clock, I think it's important for everybody to let all of us know how to get a hold of each other in case anybody wants to connect, so that we can share information or maybe meet up down the road or help out a friend if we need to. And so, Micah, can we start off with you? What's the best way for people to understand or learn about Leef Organics and your website and stuff?
Yeah, we've got a website. It's leeforganics.com. That's Leef with 2 E's. There's not to be confused with the other 9,000 Leafs out there in the cannabis world, but yeah, Leef Organics is a good spot to get a hold of us. And then, I mean, my email is Micah, MICAH @Leef Organics. leefpets.com. If anyone has questions, or I'm pretty open to sharing.
And do you have any social medias you want to shout out so people can check you out?
Yeah, we've got an Instagram page and a Facebook page. Leef, I think it's just Leef Organics is the Leef_organics on Instagram. And then we've got a pet food company that is basically, it's the same company, but it's just a division under Leef called Paleopop. And that website's paleopawfeed.com. And we kind of specialize. We actually had that before we had Leef. We were doing kind of human grade, organic, non-GMO pet food. And we merged that into Leef. And so yeah, people can check that out, and feel free to reach out to us. We're open, share our successes and our failures. So
yeah, and I love the pet products. I got old dogs, so I'm juicing that. They got pet treats, shampoo, like all kinds of cool stuff. And my animals definitely are thanking you.
Cool, right on. I'm gonna let you guys go. I gotta get jamming here, but I just want to say thank you to all you guys. Eric and Jonathan, you guys have definitely helped me out with the greenhouse knowledge over the last few years. And Dragonfly Earth Medicine, you guys have an amazing product. It's super, super good. Everyone, all the employees that we have swear by it, and we have a ton of neighbors that we've turned on to it. And so I just want to give you guys a big thanks for.
Thanks so much, Micah. It was really great having you here. We're gonna have to hook up somewhere off camera.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. It was nice meeting you guys all over this, and I'll see you guys around. Bubble Man, thanks for putting this thing on, man. This is awesome. So
yeah, man, enjoy the slopes.
Yeah, my girlfriend's sitting here. She's
you gotta get a half day now.
Yeah.
Sorry.
See you guys later. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Right on, brother.
See you guys
later. Jonathan, let's move on down the line. What do you want to? What information do you want people to know so they can get a hold of you or link up?
Yeah, our website for Forever Flowering is lightdep.com. Lightdep.com. And I'm Forever Flowering Jonathan on Instagram, JONATHAN. And come check out our demo houses. We have a beautiful site in Grass Valley, California. We got a couple of greenhouse demonstrations going on there, fully automated structure. And yeah, so grateful to be part of this. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, man. Thanks for sharing. And it's been good. It's been a good conversation. Jason, what would you like to shout out and let people know how to get a hold of you?
So we're, our company name's Deep Flower, but sort of we've got Original Blue Bastard. There's my wife.
Hi.
So Original Blue Bastard is our brand up here in Washington, and Original Blue Bastard on Instagram if anybody wants to say hi. But thank you for the invite and for bringing us on and letting us share.
Yeah, man. Thanks for sharing with us.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. I look forward to linking up with you again.
Definitely come on up next time you're up here. You'll have to see the new facility.
Yeah, I'm gonna find me an feather one of these times under one of those big old redwood trees and bald eagles and greenhouses. It's like, I want to move there, but yeah, good. Yeah, that's great. JD, why don't you let us know how to get a hold of you, brother?
Let's see. The best thing for me, I guess, is on my Instagram. It's Gold Country Cannabis on Instagram, and we've got a website going up, goldcountrycannabis.farm. Another really cool way to get your farm domain. And yeah, that's the best bet. I'm usually on there. Somebody's on there that'll respond and can find me. So definitely stay in touch, you guys. This has been awesome.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks for coming on, and I look forward to coming out and visiting your farm sometime and talking.
Yeah, I'm going to come track you down, no doubt.
Yeah, all right. I'll be here. I'm going to be around. Just hit me up, and we'll make sure we connect. Siobhan, can you let us know how do we track the Grow Sisters and Blessed Coast Farms?
We're pretty easy. I'm Siobhan Danger Darwish. You can find me all over Instagram. I also Grow Sisters. They're easy as well. So find us, say hi. My friends are your friends. Let's grow. Thank you for having us on. This was great to do some technical farm talk again. It made my heart sing. So thank you guys. It was nice meeting all of you. And yeah, find me, reach out.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, thanks for joining the show, and I like your YouTube videos, by the way. They're kind of fun, and you know what I mean. Like, you guys are like, yeah, it's good. I mean, it's good to see people trying to have some fun. I mean, this is a job and stuff, and it's not like glamorous or anything. It's just, you know, work, and people make fun out of it and stuff. It's just, you know, I see you guys out in the dirt and the dogs, and everybody's having a good time. So, I mean, it definitely, I'll come visit you when I'm up there next time. Farmer Tom.
Coming on, I really appreciate it. It's so great, you know, seeing other women in the cultivating industry. We really appreciate you. Thanks so much. We're really looking forward to meeting you off screen and hanging out and sharing a hug and a smoke. Thanks.
Yeah, definitely. Farmer Tom, where can we check you out? What events or things can we see you?
Well, here's my card. I hope you can see it. You can find me at farmertomorganics.com. You can find me on Facebook, Lowerman, Instagram at Farmer Tom Lowerman, and look for our FTHC scoring system. And we're having products in California, Washington, Oregon, and Nevada by the end of the year. So look for us out there. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Tom. We really appreciate you coming on and all of your input and, you know, putting it out there to other people to learn, you know, who are really needing it. You know, if we are going to be having a federal new takeover, we're really hoping that they're learning from you and learning it the right way. So thank you so much for giving out that information and being open.
Yeah,
thanks you guys for having me on.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. Brave shit. I couldn't do it. And for me, I mean, Dragonfly, you're hosting the show, so I'll let you guys finally wrap it up. But me, I'm at Forever Flowering Greenhouses, all one word, on Instagram. And Jonathan gave you our website, lightdep.com. And we're in Grass Valley, California. We're 1 hour away from the Sacramento airport. We're about an hour away from Tahoe. So if anybody wants to go skiing, we're only a couple hours from the bay, centrally located. So come check us. And thanks again, Dragonfly, for hosting the show while Bubble Man's in Jamaica. And thanks to Bubble Man for allowing us to have the show while he's out of town even, and his dedication to continuing the show for all these years. We really appreciate all that he does. And thanks to you guys again, Dragonfly.
Thanks so much, Eric. You know, you're one of our favorite people for sure. We're
Both
so
you
happy.
and Jonathan over the years. I mean, you know, of course, our company, when we first came out, we kind of met out in Denver initially, and that even though it was on tour and all that before, but we've been working together for a really long time, and we've always had a lot of love and integrity from you guys. So we just are really appreciative of that, and you know, we want to move forward, you know, in this lifetime, you know, with you all.
And thanks so much, Marcus, BC Bubble Man. We just have, you know, he was doing this way long before it was even cool. You know, he was getting a lot of havoc and a lot of stress in his life from continuing to get the education out. And he's just going more and more forward. And
we appreciate his family and his kids and his wife holding it down. Really important.
Yeah, thanks, Shar. And you can reach us at dragonflyearthmedicine.com. We're also on Instagram. We're totally available. We spend like several hours a day just answering random gardening questions to people. We're totally dedicated to the plant and the intention that she has and is giving it out to us as a medicine.
And we've recently finished a website called DEMpurefarms.com, which lists all of the farms that are Pure certified. It also has a whole entire page of closed loops. When people ask what is a closed loop, if it's not for, you know, it's one on the land, it's anything that one system leads into the other system, whether it's alternative energy or reusing your soils or growing your own inputs. Check out DEMpurefarms.com.
It's just one example of like-minded people, regenerative cannabis farmers joining together, and we do really encourage people in the industry to join together, because that's the way that this craft cannabis super high bomb fire is going to make it out into the industry. So.
And encouraging people to work together on the dispensary front and on the processing front to utilize their medicine and their cannabis in an excellent way. We're going to Jamaica on March 1st for 2 weeks ourselves, and we're being invited by a Rastafarian community there, and we're going to go really dive into spiritual cannabis on Jamaica and learn about their ways and their ways of connecting with the earth and midwives and spiritual healers. So we're really, really excited to talk about regenerative cannabis there and growing and cultivating cannabis off the grid in a spiritual way. That's really important to us. And also we are going to be at the Living Soil Symposium happening at the end of March, which is going to be a wonderful collection of really beautiful people, which can help answer the question of how to move regenerative cannabis forward. And regenerative cannabis is important because the mainstream big ag crazy days are on our shelves now and are coming at us. So really it's going to be our integrity and our love and our stories and our better strains that we have that's going to really keep us going forward. So I'd like to thank Bubble Man as well and Skunkman Sam for his lots of years of dedication towards bringing all this technical stuff forward. So
yeah, big up Skunkman Sam. He dropped some knowledge today that I can really appreciate.
Yeah, and there's other people that were not on this panel that are really excellent at growing in greenhouses, and reach out to them as well. We're one group. We're sharing our story. We hope it inspires you. We're all available. Check us out. Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks, everyone here.
See y'all. Have a good one.
Yep. Take one more toke for the road.
Yeah, for Dennis Perone.
Thanks to our forefathers.
Yeah. Thank goodness for the forefathers.
Have a great day. Love you guys.
Bless up.